2016, and the time is 5:04. Vice President Kirby, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will have a roll call starting from my far right.
Sandy Kravitz.
Gotta turn it on.
Kim Hartman.
Pam Kirby.
Barbara Perleberg. All members are present, and we do have a quorum. Our first item 3, approval of agenda. Are there any requests for changes to the agenda? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still learning this technology here. Vice President Kirby.
I'd like to amend the agenda to move items 7L and M off the consent agenda and put them as action items 9C and D respectively.
Okay. All right. Board member, Vice President Kirby makes the motion to move consent agenda items 7L and 7M to agenda items 9C and 9D. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Board member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes with a vote of 5-0.
So now you need a motion to approve the agenda as
Right.
amended.
Right. Okay.
And I'll do it.
Hold on.
So-
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second. Motion moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes with a vote of 5-0. All right. The board president calls upon our superintendent to present recognitions and celebrations.
And Dr. Von Eck can come up, and we have some students to recognize this evening. To start off with, we have some ASU Martin Luther King Jr. Essay Contest winners that we're very, very proud of.
I guess I'll be going first. Can I have Jordan Blue from Desert Mountain High School and Principal Wilford join me at the podium, please? Madam President, governing board members, and Dr. Birdwell, it's my pleasure to present this recognition tonight. Jordan Blue is a senior at Desert Mountain High School, and even at her relatively young age has figured out what it takes to be a leader, and she leads by example. For instance, Jordan is the president of Desert Mountain's International Baccalaureate Student Association. She has founded a school club which encourages her classmates to speak their minds and discuss current issues, and somehow she finds time to volunteer at Tranquility Trail Animal Sanctuary, a local shelter and rehabilitation center for rabbits, at which she also serves as its assistant manager. That's nice. We were told Jordan wants to study chemistry in college and that she's interested in Spanish, politics, and animal and human rights. For all these reasons, and probably more, Jordan was honored last month with Scottsdale Leadership's Jenkins Youth Award. Congratulations, Jordan. Very nice work, and we wish you all the best as you head off to college. And I believe we're going to do the photos now.
Hi, now my turn. Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Birdwell and Sandra, I would like to call up Mason Wilson, Mr. Wes Wagner, and Principal Chris Thuman from Ingleside Middle School to the podium, as well as Bryce Briggs, I see over there Bryce, and Principal Lance Huffman from Cocoa Palm Middle School. Welcome, guys. All right, we got everybody here. Nice job, Bryce. Part of Arizona State University's annual celebration of life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. includes a K-12 essay and poetry contest. The theme of this year's competition was Be the Face of Change. we're proud to inform you that we had 2 Scottsdale Unified School District middle school students who won awards this year. We're proud, first off, Mason Wilson is a 7th grader at Ingleside Middle School. In his essay, Mason wrote about his cousin Sean, who moved to Rwanda in Africa to work for a nonprofit organization that teaches people how to farm, raise animals, and start a business to sell what they grow and raise. Wow. Mason's second place essay will be recognized on Thursday at ASU. Way to go, Mason. Next, Bryce is a 6th grader at Kokopah Middle School. Bryce was inspired to write about his mother, who, despite lacking a cape, is a superhero to him. I know, isn't that great? His mom was born in Belize in Central America, where she started a charity to help the less fortunate. Now she, with Bryce's help, of course, has developed a similar charity in Arizona, which they hope to expand to California. Bryce's 3rd place essay will also be recognized at the event Thursday at ASU. Let's give Bryce a round of applause. Nice job, Bryce. Congratulations to both of these fine young writers and to their English language arts teacher, Mr. Wagner, thank you so much. And to Susan Mulhern, who was unable to make it tonight. You guys are truly the stars, and we appreciate all the great work you're doing. Thank you, everybody. Nice job. Let's give it a picture. You're going to go out with them?
That's the end of the recognitions that we have this evening.
Thank you. Our next item is item 5, public comments. Ms. Sander, do I have all the cards? Yes. We do have many this evening. In conformance with open meeting laws, the governing board may not discuss or take action tonight on any matters raised during public comments that are not on the agenda. However, the governing board may respond to direct criticism, ask staff to review the matter, or ask that it be placed on a future agenda. As a reminder, each speaker will have 3 minutes. Vice President Kirby will indicate the time with a 30-second warning. Our first public comment is from Chris Martin.
Good evening, governing board members, Dr. Birdwell, Ms. Como. My name is Chris Martin, and I reside and have resided in the Coronado complex for 27 years, and I'm in my 22nd year as a professional public school educator and proud member of SEA, AEA, NEA. I, as others here tonight, and those who may be watching, have given blood, sweat, and tears to Title I schools and our students. I, along with many others in this audience, have master's plus accreditation hours, hundreds of PD development hours. Former board member and president Bonnie Sneed shared at one of our last board meetings, that she was aware there are teachers in our district who are fearful to share their beliefs, concerns, etc., due to retaliation, payback, and disciplinary action. Well, on my bucket list, there is a line that says, speak candidly to our school board before I decide to move on, resign, or retire. I'm here tonight to speak for those professional educators who have fears of speaking in this forum and sharing their concerns. I speak for those who have expressed burnout, endured demeaning comments, have made to feel that they're inadequate, those who have had multiple walkthroughs while others have had one or better yet none with no feedback on how they're doing. I speak for the professional educators in the Coronado complex, Coronado High School, who are under such pressure to increase scores, attend numerous meetings, weekly PLCs, IEPs, and creating student behavior contracts, that we don't have time to catch a breath, sit down for their 35-minute uninterrupted lunch, use the restroom adequately, use prep time, or talk to their fellow cohorts. I speak for those who have 4 choices. No longer work at their school, but are told they have a job within SUSD, apply to show they're worthy of working with our clientele, retire or resign. I speak for the Title I middle school and high school teachers whose students are reading at a 3rd grade reading level, yet reading specialist positions are being cut at elementary schools. I speak for the teachers whose students miss more than 20% of the school year to take care of their 6 siblings while their parents go to work, have doctor appointments, couldn't get to school, or just feel like staying home or suspended and may also have jobs themselves to support their families. If you really want to change one thing in our school system, start with discipline. Start with our policies and procedures we currently have. I have so many more pages that I would love to sit down with you personally and speak, but I want someone to speak to me and come in my classroom and see how I teach and what I do, because honestly, how many of us have had them come in our classroom? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We have many more to get through, so we'll move next. Our next speaker, Rachel, I apologize for massacring the name, Feitlinger.
Feitlinger, very good. Thank you. Good evening, governing board members and Dr. Birdwell. I'm Rachel Feitlinger, the PTO president at Cheyenne Traditional School. Our entire community wants to thank you for prioritizing the needs of Cheyenne. Under prior SUSD leadership, we have been ignored and underfunded for many years. Cheyenne will be having its 20-year anniversary this fall, and our community has been waiting a very long time for appropriate acknowledgement and funding from the district. It is exciting to feel the support of the new SUSD leadership under Dr. Birdwell and the governing board. We understand how large the scope of the project is on our campus, and we also know that we are one of 30 SUSD schools. Still, I would like you to consider approving the entire project for Cheyenne in year 1. This project would include the gymnasium, science labs, computer classrooms, parking lot, front office, and other smaller security issues on our campus. Our facility lags far behind other K-8 schools in the district. For instance, we are the only SUSD K-8 or middle school that does not have a gymnasium. We have only one computer lab for over 1,000 students. Space is so tight in our science classroom that running labs borders on unsafe. Over the last few years, the Cheyenne PTO has paid for security cameras, the digital marquee, fences in our bus lane, additional walkways for safety, and other enhancements to our campus. I also should mention that we have spent over $100,000 in curriculum materials in the last 12 months, but that's for another meeting. Over the last few years, the Cheyenne we know our community will help you in any way move this project along quickly. All of the construction on our campus can happen safely while school is in session, which will expedite the project completion. The important things to us are the safety of our students and enhancing the curriculum of our traditional school. Cheyenne has excelled for so many years without adequate facilities and funding. It will be exciting to see the heights we can reach with full district support and addressing our needs. Thanks for your time and support.
Next, Elizabeth Halverson.
Good evening, Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Birdwell and Sandra. My name is Elizabeth Halverson. As a Coronado graduate, South Scottsdale homeowner, and a secondary education teacher in Scottsdale, I am here to talk with you about my thoughts on the Coronado Success Initiative. I grew up here in South Scottsdale and graduated from Coronado in 2003. It was here at Coronado that I was fortunate enough to have amazing teachers that confirmed for me that a job in teaching was what I wanted to do with my life. This school is where I decided that I wanted to be a secondary teacher and I wanted to focus on social studies. It was here at Coronado that my counselor, Mr. Chamberlain, pulled me out of my physics class junior year to tell me about the Charles Future Teacher Scholarship. I was the first person from Coronado to ever receive that scholarship. It was here at Coronado that I did my first internship from ASU with Mrs. Mikesell. Some of those great teachers are gone now, but some of those great teachers remain. I know that Coronado has different issues than it did when I graduated in 2003. I spent my first 3 years teaching at Supine Middle School. I know what it is like to be a teacher at a school that is not performing. I know what it is like to spend hours after school trying to help your students be successful by planning new lessons, providing remediation, while calling parents to talk about concerns, and worrying about your students and their home problems, understanding that their moms and dads are doing the best they can, but are sometimes working 2 or 3 jobs to keep a roof over their kids' heads. When you teach at a school that is not performing, being told you are not doing a good enough job never helps the problem. Unassigning all of Coronado's teachers and making them reapply for their jobs is demoralizing. While there may be some teachers that are ineffective, you cannot say it is the entire teaching staff. In every profession, not just teaching, there are people who are ineffective at their jobs. But that is why there's a process to get rid of those ineffective teachers. Coronado may lose some great teachers because they may not want to go through the process of reapplying for their jobs when they've been doing the right thing all along. When my husband and I bought our home, we chose to buy our home in South Scottsdale. The numbers show that something needs to be done to help Coronado, but it is not just a Coronado issue, it is a South Scottsdale issue. I have a daughter who just turned 5 and another who is almost 3. There is no place that I can send them for early childhood education or pre-K at any of Coronado's feeder schools. The only option is Title I pre-K, and I would have to participate in parenting activities. This option is based on academic need, if there is more eligible students than spaces open. Why aren't there more options for early childhood education in South Scottsdale? There should be more options for our South Scottsdale families. While something needs to change, please remember that we teachers are here because we care about kids. And getting rid of all of Coronado's teachers doesn't show that their commitment to South Scottsdale students is valued. Thank you.
Tom Roxborough, please. Roxborough. Tom Roxborough.
I will. I know.
I'm going to read a lot of this. Good evening, governing board members, Dr. Birdwell and Sandra. My name is Tom Roxborough. I'm a math and CTE teacher here at Coronado. I'm also national board certified and a member of the SEA executive board. But right now I set aside my SEA hat and I put on my Coronado hat, a proud Coronado teacher. I'm very happy to hear that you are considering measures to help our students. I could speak for hours about this initiative and willing to do so later if you'd like to contact me. But tonight I want to focus on just one thing, and that is human dignity and respect, specifically the dignity of the Coronado teachers. For years, my colleagues and myself have pleaded, implored, begged for this district to do something to help our Coronado students. Yet we were ignored, with Coronado suffering year after year of neglect. We have tried to get your attention, offering ideas to get special programs moved or initiated here. These attempts were greeted with at most hollow words of encouragement, but no real action. A few years ago, our hopes were raised when we were given the College and Career Readiness label. But those also turned out to be empty words, with no district resources used to make them happen. Nothing more than something to put on our letterhead. And in a cruel twist of fate, those very words that were thrust upon us by district with absolutely no backing, have recently been used against the teachers of Coronado to deride us for not living up to a title that the district gave us no support for. It's awesome to finally see the attention of SUSD being turned toward the needs of the Coronado students. But this initiative has been many months in the making, and yet not one Coronado staff member knew anything about it until last Monday afternoon. The fact that not one single Coronado teacher was a part of this decision-making process hurts. The very people who have given years, decades of their lives, were not considered worthy to be a part of this process. Teachers here have given their heart and soul to helping our students, and not just academically, but emotionally and financially. How do you think it feels for teachers who have given their blood, sweat, and tears to find out that they have been deemed unworthy to be included in any of the conversations that led up to this decision? The message is that we, the teachers, have been the problem, so therefore we can't be a part of the solution. Teachers who chose year after year to stay in order to help those who most need help are then told that we not only let down the students, but also the entire Coronado community. It's like a punch to the gut. It hurts. None of us are happy with the numbers that will be presented later, though there is more to the story than a spreadsheet. We've wanted things to improve for our kids. We wanted to be a part of that change, but it seems we have been deemed unworthy to participate in the behind-the-scenes decisions. Maybe this is not what was intended by the team who constructed this initiative. But from the Coronado teacher's perspective, when you put everything together, the exclusion from discussions, the absence of input, having to reapply for jobs, and then today an email sent by HR to other high school teachers offering interview training to help them apply for our positions. There's not much else that we can conclude. We who thought we were doing good works have instead been cast as the bad guys who kept our students down. Coronado teachers feel disrespected. We have not been shown our basic dignity. Conclusion, I wish the best for our Coronado students, and I'm so happy that you're doing something for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Forgot about this. Please hold applause so we may get through all the speakers this evening. Roni Asali, you're up next.
3 minutes, all right. Wait. I'm like, don't start yet. All right. Good evening, governing board members, Dr. Birdwell and Sandra. My name is Ronnie Sally, and I'm a proud math teacher at Arcadia and the Scottsdale Education Association executive board member. I look back at many of the comments that I've made to the board in the past, and even as SAA president, and I can't help but see a few common themes. So many of them have related to leadership and the major challenges that come with leading an organization, right? Big or small. And the bigger the organization gets, the more complex those issues get. But perhaps the most challenging thing an organization deals with is the idea of applying change. We all know the sound bites, right? Change is hard. No one wants to change. People aren't willing to change. And while there's merit to those, and it's important to take those into consideration, I don't think we should use those sound bites to disregard legitimate concerns and frustrations shared by my constituents, in this case being your teachers. I hope you notice that the concerns tonight are not negative towards any innovation, any ideas, anything to help Coronado and its student success. But I also hope you notice that most of the comments tonight and throughout the teachers that I heard from just in the last week revolve around poor communication and lack of thoughtfulness for our profession. So here's how the communication rolled out. The first time any teacher heard about the Coronado initiative was last Monday when they were Coronado teachers, and they were told they'd have to reapply for their job, so they either have to pick to interview for their job, get reassigned for a position somewhere else in the district, resign, or retire. On Thursday, the 12th of this last week, the board heard the presentation publicly for the first time during a work study, and as of today, I think it may have been Friday, where this was up currently as an action item to be voted on, and then it got changed a few days before that, which is good because it at least allowed for conversation to occur. But on Thursday was the first time that all teachers got to hear what was going on at Coronado. So it seems that there's one group of people, the actual teachers that are going to get impacted by this, that were not talked to, whose voices were not heard. Was it on purpose? Was this done on purpose to not slow the change process down? Was it an attempt to pass this plan before any pushback comes in? I really don't know that answer. I don't know what the intent is, but I can't help but ask those questions myself. Can it have been an oversight to not get feedback from 1,700 teachers in Scottsdale? Or at least the teachers at Coronado that actually service these students and who know the challenges better than anyone and possibly know the solutions better than anyone? Then comes the lack of thoughtfulness for our profession. Teachers at Coronado were told months ago that some of them had been hiding in the shadows too long collecting paychecks. Then 2 days later, an email praising them for their amazing work. Then a week ago, they were told that they have to reapply for their position. Let's not be so naive as to think that this is an opportunity for them, but rather what feels like a smearing of their reputation and all of their efforts. SUSC is looking for people that have a master's and 5+ degrees, 5+ years of experience to hire into Coronado. Does that mean no new teacher from ASU will ever work there if that's the expectation? If I was there and let's assume I was the best teacher at Coronado, I would not reapply because you essentially took all of my years of blood, sweat, and tears, found a way to minimize onto a piece of paper, wadded them up, and threw them back in my face. Is that the communication and thoughtfulness that we need to ensure that change is successful in our district?
Julie Sanowski, please. Julie Sanowski, please. Again, please refrain from applause so we can get through all the speakers.
Good evening, board members, Madam President, Dr. Birdwell, and Sandra. I'm a proud teacher of this district, consider myself an optimist, and I do welcome change. I am aware that not all people are alike. As a teacher who cares about attracting and retaining the best teachers to lead our students, I am a proud member of our NEA, AEA, and SEA, and I realize it's important to tune into the concerns and needs of others. In the SEA, we do this by communicating with our teachers. We do this by surveying our teachers. We do this by asking them for their input and including them in the process of change. It is important for everyone here to recognize that our TEA is a historical document, which has resulted from the hard work of many teachers, administrators, and school board members before all of us here. It is to be communicated, recognized, and followed by all district employees. That is what we have, as an organization, have put in place. It is believed, as you've already heard this evening, so I will not dwell on that the Coronado Success Initiative has been put in place with disregard to the agreed upon process. In our TEA, pages 24 and 25, section J, it discusses every effort will be made for decisions regarding staffing, and it specifically lists experimentation and innovation. It says, and I'm just going to paraphrase, plans for continuous improvement of instruction are expected by our community and supported by our strategic plan. It goes on to talk about the expectations for planning parameters as well as involvement of the community. And I'm going to assume that does include the teachers that are currently in that position. As mentioned previously, our communication in SEA, we do survey our teachers. One of the responses that I received back in December from a survey question of our teachers asking what they currently feel they need, what support they need to be an effective teacher. I received all sorts of comments from different teachers at different levels. And I know we consider this to be a high school success initiative, but I feel it's more than that. This comment comes from a first grade teacher in our district. We appreciate support from above that is encouraging and positive rather than negative and critical. I'm going to just skip some of the other information I planned on sharing, and I would like to feel free to meet with any of you at any time to discuss this. I recently watched a movie entitled Fundamentals of Caring. The premise of this movie was that in order to show caring, we must ask, listen, observe, help, and ask again. And I suggest we carefully examine how we are showing our care and concern of our teachers and students. And yes, that spells out aloha. I hope this is not an ending point for conversation, but a beginning point. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Katie Asali, please.
Good evening, Madam President, Governing Board members, Dr. Birdwell and Sandra. My name is Katie Asali, and I'm a very proud graduate of Coronado High School and a current Coronado community member. I'm also a teacher at Arcadia High School. I am here tonight to discuss my frustration with the Coronado Success Initiative. While I was a student at Coronado, my fellow students and I had amazing teachers. Many of these teachers are still teaching here today, with some great additions, I might add. Not only did I feel that these teachers did an excellent job preparing me for college, they also made school more than just a place to learn. It was a community, and a very strong one. We were a big family, and everywhere I go, I still see members of this Coronado family. School is about so much more than just test scores. It's about being empowered by your teachers and your community. I feel that this initiative will tear up this community that I believe is still strong. There are so many outstanding teachers at Coronado High School today that could have left years ago to teach at another district for more pay and less work, but they didn't. They stayed for their kids. As a teacher myself today, I can certainly appreciate the dedication that they have put forth. They stuck with our community, and now I feel that they are being disrespected. While I appreciate steps to help all students learn and succeed at high levels, and as a side note, I think that some parts of this plan have great value, but I feel that disrespecting teachers by making them reapply and not including them in conversations about anything is certainly not the way to go about it. I have so many questions, as do so many other teachers. Why should teachers have to reapply? Why was this huge initiative that will tear apart a school not discussed with the teachers? Shouldn't they have been involved in coming up with ideas since they know their students best? Why have the rest of us teachers in SUSD not been informed, as it will most likely affect all of us? If Coronado teachers wish to be treated like professionals and do not wish to be disrespected and therefore choose to leave, where will they go? Teachers at Arcadia are wondering if they will come to Arcadia and displace some of our newer teachers. Is this the case? Or will they be sent miles away to further schools? Either scenario seems unfair. Is Coronado the first step? Will this happen to the tight-knit community of Arcadia next? And where did the $7,000 number come from? Teachers get paid more than that for a 6/5 contract, and it requires less hours. Will teachers' well-deserved rights still be taken into consideration? Or will they be unassigned again if they do not meet the goals set forth by the district, or worse? I just don't understand why hardworking teachers are being treated this way. If only this was communicated with teachers before being pushed through, then maybe we could have come up with a solution together. Imagine how powerful it would have been if the idea was mentioned to the staff in its infancy and was then created by a grassroots efforts among the Coronado teachers. This would have added not only ownership and strength to the initiative, but the conversations about student learning that would have been discussed would have been priceless. Instead, here we are again, frustrated, disempowered, demoralized, and left with so many unanswered concerns. Thank you.
Beth Parsons, please. And after Ms. Parsons, Bonnie Bazan. Bazan is next.
Good evening, Governing Board and Dr. Birdwell. I'm Beth Parsons, a veteran teacher of 29 years. This is my 24th year in Scottsdale, and I currently teach second grade at Redfield. I'm a proud SEA member, a member of the executive board, and your teacher advocacy team. I'm here tonight to speak about our members' concerns and questions about the Coronado Complex Initiative. I'd like to start by reading from the TEA. On page 1, Article 1, number 4, the TEA states, "The board and the association are committed to the success of each student and believe that teachers make an enormous difference in each student's learning. We support professional learning communities. Research has shown teachers who collaborate with a focus on student learning see an increase in student achievement. We support creating opportunities for teachers to collaborate and transform school culture." So, what behaviors support a transformative school culture where teachers are not only engaged but empowered to create the needed change and innovation? According to George Couros, the author of Innovator's Mindset, our school's culture and belief system are key. Innovative leaders create space for small-scale, bottom-up innovation from teachers and students to grow among the wider system innovation happening at school or district-wide. So moving forward, if we want meaningful change, we have to make a connection to the heart before we can make a connection to the mind. Spending time developing relationships and building trust is crucial to moving forward as a whole. Without culture, there's no culture for innovation. It all starts by creating an environment where people feel cared for, supported, and nurtured, the very things that we know impact learning for students in the classroom. I sincerely hope that the governing board and district administration will keep this in mind as they consider the changes in SUSD. We value collaboration with all the stakeholders involved, and that includes getting teachers involved from the initial stages. Based on the TEA, we should have been brought into the conversation earlier. Everything in this new initiative should be under the purview of the TEA. Will you honor the TEA and build upon its strengths? Thank you.
Bonnie Bazan.
My name is Bonnie Bizon, and I am a proud SUSD educator at Kiva Elementary, a national board candidate, and our SCA secretary. I'm here tonight to speak about our members' concerns regarding the Coronado Complex Initiative. I'd like to start by reading from the TEA. Article 1 of the TEA states, "The board recognizes that teaching is a profession, that members of this profession have specialized educational qualifications, and that their participation is important to the success of school programs." And continues on page 3. Site-based shared decision-making will mean an inclusionary process in which the people who affect and are affected by significant decisions participate in making those decisions. Our mutually agreed upon TEA specifically delineates an inclusionary decision-making process. However, in the significant decision-making process that required all Coronado teachers to reapply for their jobs,
In the significant decision-making process that outlined how the needs of students would be addressed, in the significant decision-making process of how to change Coronado's learning culture, none of the professional educators or students immersed in that culture who have nurtured and fought for the success of Coronado Dons were consulted. SEA believes this was a callous disregard for the professionalism of our teachers and the caring support of our Coronado community advocates. We applaud you for the bold moves that advocate for our students on the margins. We applaud you for thinking outside the box about the needs of our community. We applaud you for the inclusiveness in the implementation process. We have the same goals. We want to strive for the educational welfare of every child in this district. If you hadn't disregarded our institutional knowledge, we could have helped you with the missteps made in rolling out this program without creating the strife, conflict, and distrust that teachers across the district are communicating to us. At our Kiva Elementary SEA meeting, our teachers who are not in the Coronado complex, who are not high school teachers, who are not significantly impacted by this change, were irate. The lack of transparency in planning this initiative was a trigger point for them. They say, we have been here before and we have been burned in the process. When the perception is that our board and district shut our teachers out of planning and innovation, we all lose. We could have helped if you came to us, but by circumnavigating your very own educational professionals, you have reignited a culture of fear and distrust that so many of us were hoping to put behind us as we moved forward with hope and with faith in a new administration. We are beside ourselves that this district keeps making this mistake. Thank you for your time.
Linda Prideaux, then followed by Edmund Richard.
Good evening. My name is Linda Prideaux. I'm a Scottsdale community member, retired Scottsdale teacher, and longtime teacher leader. I'm speaking today about the Coronado High School Success Initiative, which looks to be a wonderful partnership with ASU and the Scottsdale Charros. I understand there'll be a design day on January 21st, and that many stakeholders from around the district, movers and shakers, will get together to brainstorm, loop out to the community, and develop the plan that will be used to move forward and help the Coronado community and Coronado itself move forward and increase success for its students. This is great. Involve the community, involve the teachers, involve the students, involve all the stakeholders. We know that's what's crucial to having successful change. Unfortunately, that's where the plan falls apart. Teachers were not involved in this, as you have heard, in any part of this venture. The plan was presented to them last week, where they heard they need to reapply for their job next year. The actual model is in process, but what's known now, they're going to work more, work outside of the teacher contract, and get paid a stipend. Their choices? Reapply for their job, get reassigned in the district, retire, or resign. The listed timeline for this is also outside the current teacher employment agreement. Is the TEA simply to be disregarded? Where was the collaboration? Where was the teacher input? Where was the SEA input? Where was the Coronado community input? Apply, reassign, retire, or resign. This creates fear, anxiety, distrust, and anger, not just among Coronado teachers, but other teachers in the district as well, who wonder which school and group of teachers this is going to happen to next. That is not an atmosphere conducive to increasing student achievement. Involve the teachers. Get them to help create the model, including the timeline. Honor the teacher agreement. Honor the transfer timeline that was published earlier this year. Teachers want what's best for kids. Involve them, and you'll get a passionate group eager to be a part, and in so doing, create the necessary environment that any initiative needs to succeed. Apply, reassign, retire, or resign? That's a recipe for failure. Collaborate, don't dictate. Instead, how about involve, empower, excite? Don't do this to the teachers, do this with the teachers.
Dr. Birdwell, Sandra Coma, board members. What I'm about to say is contraindicated by everyone before me. I'm a parent. I have 6 kids. They talk about respect. Here's something they shall consider. 3 of my children have gone through Coronado. Only one will be going to college. Tonalea was combined with Supai. Why? It failed. Any measurement you want to throw up there, it failed. I'm not saying that every teacher is horrible, needs to be replaced, or anything else they've thrown up here. But I can tell you this. If one of my children is injured and they're in a hospital, and I see a bunch of doctors stamping about saying, oh, boo-hoo, my poor contract says we need to do this before we treat your child, it will not be a happy scene. I've tried to remain calm throughout this whole thing. I have listened to your work study. I have gone through this data for over a decade. The South Scottsdale schools have languished. No one can lay that on Dr. Birdwell. She just came into this. I know some people wanted to come here swinging a battle axe, killing people right and left. You know what? Most of these cabinet members probably should have been at the top of the list. Because think about this. For how many years has this data not been presented to the public? But yet the parents know when their kids say, you know what, I'm not going to make it to college, I don't have a career, and I'm going to drop out. I think right now, if the teachers just looked at the dropout rate, they should probably facepalm themselves and say, you know what, if the SEA was so strong and we're so for children, and we all as teachers care for children, I don't care from what school we're at, we're going to have these meetings, and we're going to make sure that we have at least 1 to 2 people at every board meeting demanding change. That has not happened. What I see here is what I've seen many years in the business world. A failing and faltering business system comes apart at the seams. New management comes in. People panic. You know what happens? If they have great site leaders, if these cabinet members have been explaining to them for these decades about the information, they would have said, hey, you know what? I understand there's going to be change. Right now, this is really embarrassing for me as a parent and a 32-year South Scottsdale resident to be hearing teachers trying to bicker away an issue. I look forward to change because right now I have 3 more kids coming into Coronado. These teachers better not mess it up, which means everyone needs to work together and work for the best interests. I care about teachers, but guess what? At the end of the day, these are my kids, and they are number 1. Thank you.
Bonnie York, followed by Michael Norton.
Good evening, Governing Board and Dr. Birdwell. I am the band teacher at Tonalea K-8, but I am here to speak tonight as a parent, proud parent of a junior here at Coronado High School and twin 8th graders at Ingleside. Arcadia is our home complex. My son is at Coronado by choice. He is at Coronado because of the programs that were here for him. In particular, the outstanding band and performing arts programs that are here. And my questions are, in the process of changing things, I want to make sure that we don't break what's not broken. We have some really outstanding programs, and we have teachers that have to reapply for their jobs, and they don't even know what that job is going to look like next year. Our band program at Coronado receives top state honors every single year. They go to competitions on Saturday, almost every Saturday through October and November. Are they going to be able to do that? Or are the students not going to be able to do that if they are going to school and be required to be at school on Saturday? They have band camp 2 weeks before school starts. Are they going to be able to do that? Are they going to be competitive anymore? Are we still going to have these high-quality programs? Programs that many times are what keep our kids in school. It's great to be able to educate them and have fabulous teachers, but we can't teach them if they're not there. And these are some of the programs that keep our kids in school. We have excellent teachers. And we have teachers who are being told to make a decision in a very short time on whether or not they want to be able to continue at Coronado, but yet they have questions that can't be answered yet because we don't know what it's going to look like yet. And that's not fair to those people to have to make decisions like that when they don't even know what their program may be next year. Questions such as, is this going to be a salary increase? Or is it going to be as a bonus? And that matters when it comes to taxes, because if that stipend is taxed as a bonus, you're only going to get about 50% of it. You all know that. Whereas if it's salary, it'll be taxed completely different. What is the Saturday and evening going to look like? I care a lot. And I have 2 kids that have always thought that they were going to go to Coronado, and I don't know. Are we going to send those 2 to Coronado, or are we going to go to our home school? I love this complex. We're here by choice, and there's a lot of other students who are here by choice because of outstanding programs and outstanding teachers and an outstanding principal.
Michael Norton.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak, and thank you for serving as our board members and our superintendent. I've been attending board meetings now for 4 or 5 years. I'm embarrassed to say I never showed up before and didn't pay attention to the details. I assumed everything was just fine. And the first time I walked into a board meeting, I listened to tremendously impassioned and emotional parents talk to the board about what was then the planned closing of Tonalea. When I left that meeting, I couldn't believe that anyone would ever want to be a board member. The pay doesn't seem to be that great. It's just a little bit below teacher level. And the abuse is horrible. I would not want to sit in your chairs. I thank you for what you do. I feel somewhat as if I should sit down given the amount of emotion in this room tonight. Excuse me. But there is an issue with Cheyenne Traditional School that's on the agenda, and we need to talk about it. Cheyenne's been denied assets and denied teacher assignments for so long that the school tends to sit back and think that anything that we receive is so wonderful we should jump up and down and be happy. But the allocation of building capacity and the assignment of teachers to Cheyenne at the end of this meeting won't move Cheyenne below last place in the district for either school capacity or the number of teachers assigned. We accomplish a tremendous number of things at Cheyenne Traditional School. We tend to be one of the top performing schools, but there's a bubble that takes place in the school, our school, that I'd like to talk about, and I want to appreciate everything that our PTO president said tonight. Every year, parents know that there's a problem, and every year parents leave Cheyenne Traditional School. They leave sometime in the 5th, 6th grade level because they realize that the system is underfunded and understaffed, and as it moves into the pressure-packed years of middle school, we're not going to perform at the same level that we're able to perform at the lower grade levels. Parents bail out. They bail out at the rate of about 20 to 25%, and then we try to backfill. When they leave, they take bright kids, go off to a school like Basis or Great Hearts, and then Basis and Great Hearts has a great celebration because they have these brilliant kids who do so well on teaching, on test scores. And I wonder how that happened, because we're the ones that help those kids perform as well as they do for the charter schools. What we need is just to move up to a tie for last place. We're not going to ask for a lot of benefits. We're not going to ask for anything fancy. We need additional capacity that goes beyond a couple of labs and a gym. We don't have enough room for additional teachers. We need to be able to staff our school properly. We need to be able to compete at the level that the other middle schools and K-8s can compete. We have the capability of becoming a statewide and Western regional leader. We can be the best K-8 in the West if we receive just that pittance of additional support that we need. I ask you for that. Thank you.
That concludes public comments for tonight. Next, item 6, the board president calls upon the superintendent to present her comments.
I'm going to stay to the script. No comments I'd like to respond, but I'm going to wait till the presentation to respond to much of what was said. So let's look back over a little bit of time. On January 18th, which is actually tomorrow, we have our annual district dance festival, this year hosted by Arcadia High School. 50 dancers from each of our 5 high schools will perform dance pieces created especially for the festival. Earlier in the day, all the dancers will take part in a master class taught by the Valley professional dancers. In the evening performance, if you can put that on your calendar, Arcadia Auditorium at 7 p.m. On Friday this week, it's the annual SUSD Spelling Bee. I have to tell you, from being a judge at Spelling Bees, that's one of the hardest jobs I've ever done. Bring Kleenexes on those moments. But the reality is it's also a great opportunity for kids, and they get to go on and compete. So they compete at a regional level, after the district level, and they have an opportunity to actually go and become a national spelling bee participant in Washington, D.C., and having a prior student do that, it is a great opportunity. So hopefully this year Scottsdale will send that champion. Next Monday, January 23rd, SUSD Foundation and Scottsdale Charles Foundation come together, and they put with the Hellstrom Foundation as well, and Sports Destiny Network will help us celebrate our high school fall sport athletes, All Cities Awards Banquet. It is a really great event, Governing Board, if you've never attended one of those. This is the fall. We'll have 2 more opportunities for the winter sports and then the spring. Not to be undone, the Charles have invited 200 of our students of all ages to their annual youth luncheon and baseball clinic over at the Scottsdale Stadium on January 27th. It's a fun day for both the students and the former Major League Baseball players who run the baseball skill clinic at the spring training home of the San Francisco Giants. And lastly, you'll be running from one end of the district to the other at one point in between on Saturday, January 28th. In the morning, the middle and K-8 school girls basketball teams and the co-ed flag football teams cover all the fields and the courts of Mountainside Middle School and Desert Mountain High School for their winter sports festival. And then from 11 to 1 on the campuses of Tonalea K-8 and Coronado Learning Community, they host the Student Star Showcase to celebrate all the good works the students are doing at Pima Hohokam Traditional and Yavapai, Tonalea, and Coronado. It's like a mini version of the district showcase, so a great opportunity for our Coronado complex here. And lastly, on January 28th, but in this case, you'll have to wait until April to get there, an exhibit featuring the painting, sculptures, and installation by art students from Cochise, Hohokam, Hopi, Pima, Pueblo, and Redfield go on display at the Scottsdale Center of the Arts. And the exhibits honor the memory of the former Pima teacher, Allison, and I'm going to kill his name, Veredovo, thank you, who passed away last spring. Allison's students took to calling her Mrs. Radio because they had a hard time pronouncing her name. I can understand that. The exhibits run through April the 16th, so somewhere in there, hopefully you can get in and see some of our students' artwork. Last but not least, I want to add a comment that wasn't written, and that is that last week attended MLK events here. The high school event that was held in Mojave Middle School, attended it as well. What a wonderful expression of the Scottsdale community and its acceptance and diversity and understanding that we all come together. So really appreciated being a part of that, terrific speakers. So to Cliff McKenzie, Michelle Marshall, and those that were engaged in the process and the organization, both the evening event and then the day event with students, outstanding representation of our Scottsdale community, so thank you for your great work.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Birdwell. Item 7, our consent agenda. Just to review, we have items 7L and M moved on the agenda to the place of item 9's C and D respectively. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Thank you. Board Member Kirby makes the motion. Do I have a second? Second. Board Member Hartman seconds the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes with a vote 5-0. All right. And the next item on agenda is information discussion item 8A, ASU Charles SUSD Design Initiative for Coronado High School, Coronado Success Initiative. Dr. Birdwell.
Yeah, so part of me doesn't want to stand here. I want to stand and turn this thing, but I don't get to move it. So I apologize for putting my back to you, and hopefully you won't be insulted by it. But technically, this is a business meeting. I'm actually addressing the governing board. And in addition, it's filmed. So if I turn and face the teachers, I turn my back to you, who I'm having a meeting with. So teachers behind me, parents behind me, I apologize for this. This evening, I'm going to be joined by a couple guests. Dr. Cecilia Johnson is going to join me. Punye Mishra, did I say it right? Okay, and Carly Neri are going to join me from Arizona State University. In addition, I'd like to recognize Rick Carpinelli, who's here from the Charles, and appreciate his support in being here as well. And also just to recognize that Kim Hartman sits on the Educational Committee for the Charles and has been part of this. Much to do about nothing is not what applies here. This is a lot to do about something extremely important. So let me start by saying this is not a school improvement process. This is not the continuous improvement process. This is an opportunity to take a look at what we have and think of it differently through a thinking, reprocessing moment. Much has been discussed here this evening about, and Dr. Johnson, if you want to get our PowerPoint where it needs to be, much has been discussed this evening about not involving, but in reality, the whole process is designed to be inclusive. But we didn't know for sure if we'd even have the process. Not until you get through a brainstorming stage, not till you get through a frameworking stage, not till you get through the ability to have the philanthropists like the Charles be willing to help fund such an initiative. And we've been going through that for, yes, about 4 months. But we didn't know if it was a reality or just a dream. And then it became a true reality. And at that moment, we began to put into place getting all of the players involved in that process and being as respectful as we could. I want you to know that I didn't have these discussions in secret. Matter of fact, I had discussions with Julie from SEA at multiple times along the process, the dream and sharing that. So let me share with the community some more information of why it came about. I love it when the Charles and ASU invited me to a meeting and they said, we want to make an impact. More than the impact that we make through a scholarship or a single teacher, small scholarship initiative, but something that has a significant change that is lasting, something that will bring the district forward. Those opportunities are rare. I was the interim superintendent at the time, but I embraced the brainstorming process to bring this together and the excitement that came behind it. What I put in front of them was an issue that I was already aware of, and that is here in the Coronado High School, we have a need. And that need is, yes, backed by data, but it's also backed by story, anecdotally, from many different students. And yes, there's success here. And I've acknowledged that there is success. But there's also a need for an opportunity. And on this screen, you see last year's graduates, grade 12, 275 students, of which only 38% showed that they are ready for college. When we combine their coursework and their GPA, it lowers to only 28% of the students show that they have the aptitude to go to college. Only 2 students took an ACT test. Only 25 students took an SAT test. Only 12 students took an AP exam and could score 3+ or higher. When it came to taking an AP course and getting an A, B, or C, only 29 students were able to do that. But here's the other side of that story that's really interesting. 86% of the time, they sat in school. They have great attendance. They come. They want to be educated. They want a future. They're not absent 20% of the time. 86% of the time, they're here, looking for us to deliver that which is unattainable at this moment to them. That's the urgency that I feel as a superintendent. That's what drives me to be open to talk to the Charles and Arizona State University to say, could we do this through a different process than what's been done before, but yet still based on good research? So we pulled together that partnership, and the first initial piece is to understand something behind the data, but the only way to do that is to get the stakeholders in the room. So we're bringing 150 members of the community together, students, teachers from Coronado, teachers from the greater Scottsdale community. We have parents, our graduates, our alumni. We're bringing all of these folks together to have a conversation about Coronado, to learn that which we don't know. Now, I know the teachers want something concrete and they want to know exactly what next year will look like. So here's the answer. It will look very much like it does today. Because next year is a design year. Next year, we spend an entire year with the teachers discussing the future, designing the possibilities, and putting together the reality. It will take a full year process to do that. But not everybody wants to be part of that journey. So let's acknowledge that. Let's respect it. Let's actually give people choices, and that's what we've attempted to do here. This success initiative is about the student. And yes, in being about students, we as adults are affected sometimes. But it's about a choice. It's about presenting people a choice. You can be part of the journey, or you can choose not to be part of the journey, and I understand and respect that. So when you say the TEA, yeah, I agree with you. The TEA clearly states that in this process, on page, we talk about whether or not in the process a teacher can lose their job in an initiative. And the answer to that is they're not in this. A contract with the Scottsdale Unified School District is a contract between the governing board and the teacher to work in Scottsdale. Then assignments are made. We're trying to move this process with a process that already exists within our schools already. We've put our time frame together to match that so that teachers could look for other jobs that they typically like to do. There was an email sent out. Someone mentioned an email. That's first I'd heard of it, but thank you. The email was sent out from Susan Doyle in HR after talking to Julie to create a respectful process to provide support to teachers. I didn't even know the email was sent. But I'm glad that they did, and it was offered to any teacher. It didn't exclude Coronado teachers. So I'm confused sometimes when we go in a certain direction. Teachers will be engaged throughout this process. It is data-driven. We want to look at the data. We want to look at the benchmarks. We want to look at the last 10 years and look forward. We know that we've had a drop in academics over the last 10 years. We know the last 5 have had a significant drop. Yes, I met with the staff last Monday and said, here are your choices, and we're looking for will and skill, but we understand not everybody wants to do it. But we also understand we're asking you to do more than we're asking any other teacher in the district. We're asking you to, yes, you can show up 15 minutes before school, but we're asking you to stay an hour after. Because teams need to meet. You need to go over the data. We can't let a student skip. I want to tell you that there was a story told today of a student from Coronado High School, a senior, who has spent 4 years with us, ladies and gentlemen, and still is not speaking English. Do you know that he doesn't talk to any of the adults that try to talk with him about his future? Do you know he still isn't engaged with the school? But you know something? His attendance is outstanding. For the last 4 years, he's been here every day. But he academically made no progress. We need to address all students. And so this is really an initiative to say, are we meeting the needs of all students? Are we giving them the opportunities? Are we providing college career readiness? I don't know what the model will end up looking like, and that bothers some folks. But I'm not dictating a model here. After our day on the 21st, we'll begin to pull together a wisdom group that will help the teachers in that process. They'll continue to give them feedback. But the teachers will design the program going forward, not the district office. That's the whole point of the program, is to let the teachers design it. And in doing so, we've looked at some extra pay in that. I'm going to come back to ASU's piece like we did in the work study. I want to get further down this piece to answer some of these questions. On the 21st, all community, they will work with ASU. They're going to describe that program here in a minute. Again, students, parents, community at large, business, alumni, Coronado teachers, SUSD teachers, are classified employees from across the Coronado complex, administrators, alumni administrators who want to be a part of this. We've actually had to turn people away. We've had people asking to be a part of it from our community, excited to do something. Yes, all staff are guaranteed an SUSD position, if not on an improvement or a remediation plan. That's a different pathway. That's a different issue. Classified, there's no effect whatsoever. All of our classified remain. Our administrators were offered to remain. We have a principal who's chosen to pursue some other family pathways. That's fine. So we have an opening. We'll look for the very best fit, and we'll use our normal principal hiring processes. The all certified staff will go through a selection process. Well, the only way to select is to get in front of us and tell us, yeah, go through we're trying to treat everybody equal, but we need an option to come in and interview. I use the term interview. Come show me what you got. This is, I'm excited about that. I'm excited that you've been here 24 years. Show me what you've been doing. I'm new. The interview team is new. We're excited to hear your stories too. But we also know in the processes that we need to have equity. Every teacher should be treated exactly the same and go through the same process. That you should go through a series of interview questions that are exactly the same, that have some latitude to be towards your academic area, but doesn't treat you different than the person who's in the room next to you. That we don't make an assumption that you're a good teacher and you're a bad teacher. I'm not making any of those assumptions. As far as I know, every Coronado teacher is an outstanding teacher. But I don't know that for sure. Come talk to me. Come go through this process. If it's the right fit, then please join the journey. And in doing so, I believe that it's going to require that we as a district put some money behind the initiative. The one thing's for certain, you have to be highly qualified and properly certified. So does every teacher in the district, in every job that we offer. We'd like you to be willing to use technology. There's a reason for that. We want students to have updated grades and the ability to make sure that they have that information. And if they do miss school, because we know 86% of the time they're here, but sometimes they're not, that they can get on the website, go to that teacher's webpage, see what assignments they missed, and be able to catch up before they get back. We'd like to have that ability. So yeah, is that best practices? You bet it is. And I hope someday Scottsdale can say every teacher has a webpage, every teacher has their bio up there. Every teacher has their syllabus up there. Every assignment is on there for every parent in Scottsdale, because that's best practices. But we're not there. We'd like to start with Coronado and get there. Would we prefer a master's degree? Yes. Why? Because the community college requires one. We can't have a dual enrollment class without a master's degree now. 5 years experience, why? Because the research says that the first 5 years of teaching we're learning. Does it exclude? No, that's why it says preferred. Preferred for a reason, not exclude. We know there are graduates that come out and do a fabulous job. I know there are 25-year veterans who do a fabulous job. I know there are teachers with doctorates. I'm not going to exclude you either. We'd like the very best cohort to come together, because for the next 12 months, starting in July, they are going to embark on a design process, thinking outside the box. Next year, Coronado High School is continued to be a comprehensive high school like it is today. Should there be some supports for students? You bet. What are some other things teachers need to be aware of? And trying to be completely transparent, we said, look, we don't know what you bring to the table, but we're going to ask in that process of paperwork gathering, what have you done? Are you nationally board certified? Do you know reading lexiles? Because that's critical in high school today. Reading lexiles is a significant issue. Do you understand data for learning? Have you been through that training? You should have. We did it this year. Hope so. Do you understand formative assessments? You should have. We did it this year. Have you ever had brain-based instructional practices? Have you done multiple intelligence? Do you know thinking maps? Do you know DBQs? Do you understand close reading? Have you done the AP training if you want to be the AP teacher? Have you done cooperative learning? Do you know the difference between cooperative learning and groups? Do you understand Marzano's 9 high-yield strategies that have been out for secondary for over 20 years? Have you ever done any training in motivating and inspiring students? Have you done Ruby Payne's working with kids of poverty? Have you done transforming schools? Have you done AVID? Have you done writing across curriculum? Do you understand academic vocabulary? Have you integrated technology? By the way, have you ever done a flipped classroom? What have you done? I don't know until you tell me. Please tell me what it is that you bring to the table, because I think you bring special gifts. That's what we're asking. Again, not trying to insult, but trying to understand the faculty that sits before us. Why? Because if you don't have it, then we want to provide it. If no one on that application process has ever seen Marzano's works and the 9 high-yield strategies, then let's take time in July during that 2-week bring that group back, and let's go through those. Because the research clearly says it'll make a difference in the lives of children as they learn. So let's understand those as a professional. What do you do for that extra dentist? Someone asked. I don't know. We don't know what that means. Well, because we're just getting out and sharing. It's an addendum like a coach would receive. It comes out of DSAG dollars. It's for our teachers certified, because we understand that we're going to ask you to do a little bit more. Under the TEA currently, you can only have 15 hours of meeting time throughout the year. 15 in 180 days. That's not enough to get the work done that we need to do for these students. Not for teaming and data analysis and training and individual tutoring and parent meetings. And yes, it says in the TEA that IEPs and 504s are the exceptions, but what about the other kids that need a little extra meeting? What about my individual learning plan, because I'm just your average learner who's struggling? Or I'm the student who hasn't learned to speak English yet, and I need some help. Best practices and research says that teachers who are student advisors as well, along with academic advisors called counselors, can make a difference in the lives of children. The Charles have volunteered to, as we go down this pathway, when we're ready, to find us a mentor for every student, an adult mentor, business, successful individual who's willing to come spend time with our students. We're going to ask that the teachers sign up for 1 Saturday or 2 evenings a month where they're available for the kids who can't come after school. Because last year, the data showed that 50 of our kids were involved in some type of extracurricular out of 250. We'd like to see 200 of 250 engaged in some type of activity, because we know the research behind that. Twice a quarter, attend a Saturday teacher training. Where's that come from? Alhambra. Alhambra has the very best research behind the impact on that. I don't want to get the very best teachers and take them out of class to go to training. We want you to stay in class with the students, but we understand giving up a Saturday means that you should be paid for that. Will those be half days? Will they be long days? How many? Some will be design, some will be instruction. What will they look like? They'll be up to the team, because the team will be assembled and determine what those Saturdays, what they need on those Saturdays. Will they be half days? I would imagine they'll be half days. But it'll be the team that decides that, not the superintendent. Return to work 2 weeks prior for 4 days each week, still preserving that 3-day weekend at an additional workshop rate. 4 days to work on the design, to student support. What will we do to support the students this year? And time on instructional practices after we find out what we have and don't have. And I would imagine within that cohort, some of the teachers will be doing some of the training. And then we're going to reach across the aisle to our friends at ASU and ask them to assist us with some of this. And we asked our Charles to support us so that we could have that additional pay. It's a large project that does take an entire community. Dr. Johnson's going to talk about a time frame with you. Then we're going to ask Arizona State University to come up, and our professors that have joined us to talk about the actual Thinking Design Day, because that's where we engage the stakeholders. And that design process then continues for another 12 months with the teachers of the Coronado High School that decide they want to be a part of the journey. The design has not been put together. It is in the very first stages, awaiting the expert to design it, and that is the teacher.
As was shared earlier, the presentation of the Coronado Success Initiative was made to the Coronado staff on January 9th. Dr. Birdwell and I intend to present to the SUSD learning communities over the next 2 weeks, January 17th to the 27th. We're going to be sending out an email to all staff. There may be other staff that have secondary certificates that are not currently teaching at the high school, so we want to make sure that they can choose. There'll be 4 opportunities that they can choose to attend and get more information from this presentation. There will be a separate internal application to allow the opportunity for the Coronado High School teachers and all SUD internal teachers to share why they want to stay at Coronado and go on this journey and what they bring to the table, what professional development they have. So there'll be a 2-week window for that. It's a very abbreviated application. It's more, tell us about yourself and why you want to participate in this journey. February 3rd will be the final day for an opportunity to share from the staff what it is you want to do. Do you want to go on the journey? Would you rather go to another site and share your expertise? Do you intend to retire? Or are you resigning? Maybe you're moving out of state. Maybe you're staying home to raise your children. It's just an opportunity to give you the chance to share with the district what it is that your desire is. The interviews will be scheduled for 2 weeks, February 6th through the 17th. Yes, it will be an interview team, but it will be an interview team that includes their colleagues who are experts in content area, so that they get an opportunity to share what they know in their content, as well as it's that will and skill piece in that interview. Be very short, 30 minutes, but an opportunity for them to tell us why they want to remain at Coronado or why you want to come to Coronado High School. February 21st will be a day to review the candidates internally. February 24th, the Coronado High School staff will be assigned, and February 27th, we will post any openings. We hope we don't have any. We know we have extremely talented and qualified teachers in Scottsdale, but if we do, we'll post externally on February 27th. We want to emphasize, too, that it has to do with the students, and that every student that comes and graduates from Coronado High School has an opportunity to go to college and or career, and that they have the supports and the tools needed to achieve those goals. What they determine is personal success.
Now, before we turn it over to ASU, let me say this, that we've met in Tucson with superintendents who worked on the design turnaround for some Tucson schools. And their 3-year process, and they shared their pitfalls. One of the issues they shared is it's really critical to find a staff who really wants to do this and will say, I will be here and I want to be a part of this for the next 3 years, that was critical for them. They also mentioned that funding something beyond the 3 years becomes the struggle. So I heard a teacher say at the end of the work study last week, not enough money for that kind of work. I was so proud to carve out $7,000 per teacher, 15% above the average teacher pay, to say we acknowledge that this is greater work and we're going to put money behind it. And disheartened to hear, and maybe it was an emotional response, but disheartened to hear someone say not enough money for that kind of work. But let me tell you, whether or not I got an addendum or not as a teacher, this is the kind of work I would have stepped up to. This is the kind of challenge as a teacher that I loved. Because let me tell you what, these kids deserve the very best we're willing to give. And I know there are 40 teachers in Scottsdale who want to do this. I hope all 40 in Coronado want to do this. But if not, I believe in my heart there are 40 teachers in Scottsdale who want to make a difference in the lives of 1,000 students who reside here. And it's time that we do something different. Now, what is that different? I've known superintendents to come in and dictate design model changes. I've also watched them fail for doing that. I don't know the result of what we'll end up with or exactly what that design will look like, but I believe in the process that Arizona State University presented, that it will give us direction, because they're going to work with the boots on the ground. They're going to work with the teachers. They're going to listen to the students and the parents and the community and create this design process. And out of those 150, there's going to become a wisdom council that will continue to support the teachers in this school. And I do believe in that process. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues from ASU to talk with you, and then we'll have a conclusion. If I sound firm, I'm passionate about kids. I don't know. I won't make an excuse for that. We're bringing this forward because we're passionate about the students here in Coronado. I hope our teachers will get on board and want to be a part of that. And I hope that $7,000, as insulting as it might have been to some people, I wish I had $50,000 to give you each. I don't have that kind of money. But we did take the DSEG money and we reallocated it to this campus for a purpose. But the DSEG money also helps the entire district in various areas. But I do think it's an appropriate expenditure of the money, and we bring budgeting forward, it'll be in there designated to this complex to make a difference, and I think that we can do that financially. And I do stand behind the $7,000. I think it's appropriate. So Arizona State University, they're the design experts. Let them talk to you a little bit about the design.
I'm Carly Neary. I work at Arizona State University, and I'm also a proud Pueblo parent. I have a kindergartner and a first grader, and thanks for listening to us today.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Birdwell, members of the board, Madam Secretary, parents and teachers. This is fascinating for me to be here today. My name is Punya Mishra. My official title is I'm associate. I keep doing this back and forth thing. It's very strange. Associate Dean for Scholarship and Innovation at Arizona State University. I've been here at Arizona now just for 6 months. Spent 18 years at Michigan State University as a professor there. Most of my work, I work very, very closely with teachers. Teachers are the favorite group of people I love to work with. Even today, the only thing I negotiated when I left Michigan State was that I would continue to work with the STEM project. I work with 125 teachers in inner city Chicago. I'll be back in Chicago in March. I'll be back in Chicago in May. I'll be back there in December because I love working with teachers. So it feels kind of odd to be in this position here where I'm hearing all these different things, right? Also, I've served as a school board member. I was a researcher, an academic, a professor. I felt that too far I'd been sitting outside the system. I said I should be a part of it. So I was a member of the Okemos School District Board for 2.5 years. I would have been on the ballot if I hadn't taken this job at Arizona State. I'm also a parent. I have a son who's in college. I have a daughter who's finishing high school. In fact, she will be here next week to check out Arizona State University and see if she wants to live close to her parents or whether she wants to go somewhere else. We shall find out. And so it's kind of interesting for me because I see every perspective that's being voiced here. I have a huge respect through my work with the school board of the kinds of pressures and tension that superintendents deal with, the kind of juggling of what are sort of fundamental dilemmas, and dilemmas are sort of more complicated than problems because problems have solutions, dilemmas have resolutions, which often mean compromise. So I will not get into the sort of the details of this stuff because that really is not for me to speak about, all right? What I'm here to talk about is this process and plan that we are putting in place, and I want to highlight a couple of pieces of that. One, this is not your typical school improvement plan or something that way. This really is participatory design. I firmly and completely believe in that. Without the voices and the participation of the members who this is going to affect, and that means students, that means teachers, that means administrators, that means members of the community. Without that conversation, this cannot happen. We have had lots of opportunities where we have done top-down imposition of certain plans and ideas, and they do not work. So I firmly believe in the participatory nature of this design. I firmly believe that the day on the 21st will be a day of conversation, a day of really thinking about what does it mean to be a student in schools today. We can look at the statistics on this. 25% of kids are not engaged in elementary school. How scary is that? By the time we reach high school, it's up to around 55 to 60%. And I include my kids in that. My kids grew up in an extremely privileged environment. You know, both parents well-educated, we push them for education, curricular activities, this, that, and the other. And we emphasize how important learning is, and they still don't like school. To me, this is a really exciting opportunity, speaking personally, to be a part of this process. I know there is a whole politics around which is happening, and that's perfectly fine. That's how it should be. That's what being a member of the school board taught me. It's the voice of the community needs to be heard, the voice of the teachers need to be heard. But at the end of the day, this is a participatory design activity, and I firmly believe in that we will not do this as come up with a plan on Saturday. No, Saturday is a day where we decide what is it that we are going to pay attention to, what are the issues that we care about, is it whether our teenager is getting enough sleep? That's for you to decide if that's an important problem. Or do we give them too much homework? Or whatever it is that the groups come up with. And then we form the smaller design teams, and our goal at Arizona State is to build capacity in the high school. It's not for you to come to us every time you have a question. We want to build the same design capacity in the teams in the school for the next year, so that, because these problems change, what we have to learn is ways to figure out of dealing with problems as they come up, rather than running to somebody for a solution. That's what we want to do. I have a handout which I've given the board members, and that can be made public if you want to share it electronically. Anybody who's interested, please feel free. I have, I don't know how much more detail we want me to go, but I would be remiss if I did not thank a couple of people. The Dean of the College of Education, Dr. Carol Basile, she is sort of the person who has sort of pushed us as a College of Education to thinking about us differently. This engagement with the community of being embedded in local schools and so on. We've had a long relationship with Scottsdale and other local school districts, but to get deeper into that engagement is something she has pushed. So I want to thank her for that. And of course, members of the Chavez Foundation and people here at the school, at this district who have helped us. I mean, I could go on and on. I'm a professor, they pay me to speak. So, but I think I just want to second something that the superintendent said. I would love for all the teachers who are at Scottsdale to continue. I love working with teachers. I mean, I directed a master's program for 10 years. There are programs, I mean, this is, why do you think I came to ASU? Because ASU says we pride ourselves in who we take in. That's what my master's program in Michigan State was. If you were a teacher and whatever the minimum requirement for getting into the program, we will take you because we will work with you. That's our job. That's our job as a College of Education, as professors. I think that's it, unless there are questions or comments or anything. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And on one final note, we have had a long partnership. iTeach is one of those partnerships, and iTeach is where student teachers come and are placed in a school district to the next generation. Our goal in working with the iTeach side of Arizona State's College of Education is to have a iTeach intern in every classroom in Coronado next year. So not just one teacher, but 2 teachers in every classroom, the current teacher and the future generation. And we think by being part of this model, the future generations of teachers are also going to be even better equipped as they go forward. So we want to take and expand our iTeach program at the secondary level, really targeting our Coronado complex, and we really think our students will benefit from 2 teachers in every classroom. I think when we're done with this process, actually I think there'll be some other schools that say, hey, how about us next? The reality is, why Coronado? Because it's our lowest graduation rate, it's our highest dropout rate, it's our lowest career college readiness piece. That's why we chose this school, not because the professionals are not great people. They are great people. and we appreciate what they've done. But I also understand that this type of initiative doesn't work for every teacher. And so there's a commitment there. So we hope that the teachers will choose to join us, and I have to say again, I'm very excited about this. It really is about the students, and I'm sorry that teachers felt like they weren't going to be involved, because it is all about them. It is about teachers designing it. So I thank you for allowing us this opportunity. I thank Charles for their partnership, and we'll take any questions you might have. By the way, Dr. Johnson is a district level employee in charge of the process. She is not the principal of Coronado, and nor will she be the principal next year. Let's get that on a public record. She is overseeing the design process in order to make sure there's that liaison between Charles ASU and the support for the school. So she is an additional support from the district level.
Thank you, Dr. Birdwell. Comments from board members? Board Member Hartman?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I made some of these comments on Thursday, but I would like to make them tonight since it's more of a public meeting. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge and thank four groups of people that are represented here tonight. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Mishra and Carly Neary and Dr. Basile. We appreciate your innovative and generous leadership that you're sharing with SUSD. Secondly, I would like to acknowledge and thank the innovation and courageous leadership of our Charros. They've been a partner for SUSD, many of you know, for many, many years. And they once again stepped up and said, what more can we do for this district in a very, very generous capacity? Third, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the courageous leadership of Dr. Birdwell and the leadership administration. The reality is we shined a light on some realities that we acknowledge things could be better, and what is that going to look like? And that is exactly what we're doing here today. This is not easy. This is not easy lifting. This is not things that happen overnight. It takes commitment, courageousness, and perseverance. And last, I'd like to thank our teachers and acknowledge specifically our Coronado Complex teachers. You've done wonderful work, and I am 100% certain you will continue to do so. At the same time, I'd also like to acknowledge we talked about change, and we talk about it in a really flippant way sometimes, but change is really difficult, and I do understand that. And the rate of change of this seems incredibly fast. But I will share, I've also talked not only to teachers, I've talked to parents as well. And I'll tell you what, from a parent and a student perspective, this rate of change is not fast enough. So we've got this dilemma, and the way we conquer the dilemma is by working together in an inclusive process. So I encourage the outstanding teachers of Coronado and across the district to join this journey. The reason why I'm passionate about this is when we shine the light on the data, here's the reality. As an SUSD district, we're outstanding. We have a 90% graduation rate with a 90% college attainment rate. But when we look at one of the 5 high schools, being Coronado, we have a 65% graduation rate. We have a 38% college and career readiness. We have 19% college attainment. That is not good enough, particularly in an economy where we know that 68% of our jobs require some type of college or post-secondary certification. We cannot afford to leave anybody behind. So I, together, as a board member with teachers, with administrators, with community leaders, want to move forward and change those odds for all of our students. Last, I just wanted to speak to process. I have a career of transformational change, and I know that sounds like a big thing, but I'll tell you what, the adage we always use is what location is to real estate, communication is to change. Communication, communication, communication.
And it sounds like we haven't done enough, and all I can say is let's do more. The other thing I want to share is that this is a very thoughtful process. These things don't happen overnight. The typical process of transformation is assess, design, implement, operate, sustain, and continuously improve. We are just in the assessment phase right now. The design is absolutely an inclusive process, and I am so encouraged that we have standing room only for our design initiative. So there are plenty of people, stakeholders, as Dr. Burwell outlined who they are, already want to participate. So I encourage anyone, that's not the only time to participate, as Dr. Burwell already identified, it's a year-long process. So I'm going to sum that up just by saying thank you for the courageous leadership. Thank you for the teachers and administrators that are willing to continue to move this district forward in a very positive way. Thank you.
Vice President Kirby?
Thank you. I'll keep this short. I would say my fellow board member Hartman did a fabulous job of summing this up tonight. And as in my discussions that I've had one-on-one with Dr. Birdwell about this initiative, and I challenged her, that's my job. And at the end of the day, she had me with, it's about the students. It's about the students here in the Coronado learning community. So I too join in Board Member Hartman's comments. We're not taking a formal vote tonight, but I want the community to know that I, as a board member, I am very much behind this. I support it, and I'm very excited about the future of this complex. There's much work that's happening here beyond just this high school. The entire complex has some heavy lifting happening every day, starting with the elementaries. So the future is very, very bright, and SUSD and the Coronado complex is poised for greatness. So I applaud the efforts of everyone Board Member Hartman listed, as well as Board Member Hartman. Thank you for your participation on the Education Committee with the Charos and being a part of this as well. So thanks.
Thank you. Any further? All right. Well, then I too will underline and underscore and highlight comments of Board Member Hartman and Vice President Kirby. I agree wholeheartedly with all of them, and especially the gratitude for all the educators that are ready, willing, and able to join this journey with us. For many months, we have been talking a lot about the exciting momentum we have driving SUSD in a new direction. And while I have great respect for the comments tonight and the teachers who stood up and the passion behind their comments, I still can't help to think what message this initiative, I believe, sends about our new SUSD. With the Coronado Complex discussions, K through 12, an urgent need to better serve our students academically has never been more honestly and openly identified. And I am so happy we are not sitting here tonight hearing about another curriculum or textbook that we think will solve it. We are not being sold another latest and greatest program or snazzy label that simply shines the light away from the problem. We are here supporting the belief that what moves our learners to the next level is a team of highly qualified teachers with a shared understanding and vision for reaching every student's highest potential. We know there are those teachers at Coronado. We know there are those teachers here in our district. We are here supporting the belief that what moves our learners to the next level is a principal and staff supporting those teachers with strong academic leadership and high-level training that comes with accountability. This support is so strong, and I agree with my fellow board members that we are as passionate about it because it appears we are ready to really put our money where our mouth is. The message seems very clear to me tonight. To all the educators and stakeholders in our district that share these beliefs of engaged and empowered teaching focused on the student, then the new SUSD is indeed where you belong. We need you all. And together with courage, we will continue to head in the right direction. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to our staff and everyone here who presented this topic. Thank you. All right, no more comments? Thank you. No more comments. We will move on to an information discussion item 8B, pre-kindergarten update.
Alrighty, so we're moving from high school into preschool, and look at the room empty. So, it all starts in preschool. And I'd like to welcome Debbie Barra to the mic to give you an update. One of the things that we've been looking at truly is how critical preschool is to the preparation of kinder readiness. And in reality, that Scottsdale has a need to actually expand some of the work that we're doing there, and we have a leader who's been working on that with some exceptional staff. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Debbie Barr, who's in charge of our preschool. And I think you're going to be joined by Dr. Wong a little bit here on the gifted side of preschool.
Just for a little
Thanks for
bit.
being here.
Absolutely. Good evening, President, Board Member Kirby. I'm sorry, I totally blew that from the beginning, didn't I? Madam President, board members, Dr. Birdwell, Cabinet, and Sandra. It is my pleasure to talk to you tonight about our little people. And every time we think about our preschoolers, that's where the foundation starts. We have to start and we have to educate our little guys to be able to enter into kindergarten and have that kindergarten readiness. And that's actually what our whole purpose is behind today's presentation. Our very first thing that we did was we went out and we looked to see how many pamphlets were out there. If I was a parent and I wanted to shop at Scottsdale and I wanted to find out the very best preschool for my children, how would I find out what was there? When I first came on board, there were between 14 and 17 different flyers on this. So basically, I got all of my staff, who is one of my staff members, June Torrance, who is with Panda Program. I got Larry Conti, who was with my community ed, and I got Shelley Pappas, who is with my title, and we all sat down and said, how do we create one pamphlet? How do we go through and let everybody know it's a one-stop shop? If I'm a parent and I happen to go into a school like Cherokee, but I want to know what's available, can I see it in one pamphlet? And so that's what we created. It's both in Spanish and English, and as you know, with everything like this, it's work in progress because it's constantly changing and updating. So we're very excited to let you know that that is online right now. Parents can see it, and when we're having our kindergarten and preschool roundups, parents are going to be handed that information. Along with that, we decided we would show you some pictures of what's going on in the classrooms. The most important thing is there's 4 areas that we really focus in on when you're walking into a classroom, and one is group play. When children come from an environment where they are a single child at home, or they're used to going to possibly church schools, but they're not really engaged with a lot of curriculum going on, and we try and introduce the importance between group play. What is it like when you have somebody next to you? You can't grab something from them and take it just because it's mine now. I see it, therefore it is mine, or I wanted that and she took it, or he took it, so it's mine. No, we really have to go through and teach students the whole act of how to play with one another, and believe it or not, it does take practice and a lot of time. Snack time. If you've ever been to McDonald's and you see the children sit there, the first thing they want to do is open up the toy. Well, we have to teach children that they can't do that they have to sit there and they have to eat their snack. And not only that, they can't take somebody else's snack because it doesn't belong to them, that it has to belong just to them. Those are skills that we are teaching children, so when they become adults and you happen to be sitting across from your table from your spouse, and your spouse says, I would like some of that, and just grabs it, you have to say, remember in preschool, they taught you not to just take it. You have to ask. Also, entrepreneurship, that is huge that we want to teach our children because they have to understand the cost of things. Things do not come free. There is a reason why there is a cost to everything. So we actually started down in our preschool area that they have actually a shop where they have to pay for different activities. And exploration. Every kindergarten preschool child from the age of 3 coming up has to understand that just because I have an object, that doesn't mean this is a pen. What could this be? Could this be an airplane? Could I create something out of it? Could I take it apart? And is that how we start engineers, beginning to see how do things get built and how do we put them back together? And does it get put back together? And again, those are activities that we love, that if you walk into a preschool classroom, the kids are always engaged in everything they are doing. The next thing to let you know is right now we have 404 students that are registered for our pre-K program and our preschool program in the community education program. We have 104 that are belonging to our title programs, and we have 165 in our PANDA program, which is our special needs program. So Scottsdale Unified School District right now is educating 709 of our little people, which is huge for us. And we're only hoping to grow. We really, really want to grow this program and have every child that is out in a neighborhood. I know I heard a teacher speak earlier, and I want to grab her if she hasn't left yet, good, because I want to let her know that if you want your child in a program, we want your child in a program. We don't want you to go look somewhere else. We don't want you to go to a private care or somewhere. We want you to come to Scottsdale because they offer the best. And if you're not capable of coming, or your schedule doesn't work for you to be able to participate in some of the parenting classes, then let's work through that with you. And let's make sure that your child is able to come to the program. I belong to the National Association of Elementary School Principals. I feel very strong on this, and about 3 years ago, we started looking at what were best practices for our pre-K. We had never done that before. We had always focused in on K-8. And so we had to go back and think about what do we need our little children to know? But more than that, what do we need our principals to know? Because not all principals that are elementary principals are early childhood endorsed. We just aren't. And so when you go into the school and you go into a classroom for preschoolers, what are you looking at? So we created some standards, which are written up there. Embrace early childhood learning. That means we have state standards at this district. Not in this district, in this state. Every preschool child has the same standards they are taught, whether you're going to school in Scottsdale, you are going in PV, you are going in Deer Valley. Wherever you're going, the teachers have to embrace the state standards. So if you're a principal and you're going in, you need to make sure you understand what those standards are and what you're looking for. We also talk about engaging families. How do you go out and get families engaged? How do you bring them into the classroom? How do you start letting them know that this school doesn't belong just to your child, but it belongs to you? You are a parent, and we want you engaged in this school. The third one is promote appropriate learning environment for young children. What does that look like? What am I actually teaching? Do I have an area that is set aside just for calendar? Do I have an area that's just set aside for a library? What does that classroom look like? The next one is high quality teaching. When you walk in, if you see someone sitting behind their desk and the kids are kind of doing their own thing, is there a purpose behind it? Because sometimes there really is. Or is maybe that teacher just not teaching? So as a principal, you need to be aware of what that should look like. And our last one is use multiple assessments. Are you doing through observation? Are you doing what we call the TSG, which are the teaching strategies? That actually is something that the state gives us, and every preschool teacher is supposed to go in and assess their students and put the information into, it's basically a part of ADE, and so we can pull up and see where we are across the board here at Scottsdale or any other district. The next one is there are actually standards for teachers. And so when you walk into the classroom, is the teacher talking orally? Are they using not baby language, but are they actually enhancing the vocabulary? Because preschoolers come to us, and they should come to us if they come from an environment where parents read to them with over 300 million words. If they don't have that, then we are really struggling. So with some of our kids that don't get that ability, we actually start behind already, and we have to work and get them. So we want the teacher to speak orally in the classroom, and just really, vocabulary is one of the most important things to do in the classroom, and to read to them. That's where literacy comes in. What are the books that we are choosing? Are they books of interest? Are they picture books? Are we having them do predictions? Because kids will come up with their most amazing stories. They've created their own story. It might not be the story to the end of the story that the author meant, but they come up with their own story. And then we talk about life skills. Life skills, again, when you're at McDonald's and kids are running all around and stuff, everywhere, but when you walk into a classroom and the teacher says, time to go, let's line up, and the kids line up immediately, or they learn wash your hands after you go to the restroom or after you've had snack, those are life skills that we teach our little preschoolers. Mathematics, when you walk in, you're not going to see just adding and subtracting. You're going to see geometry and algebra going in at their level where they can learn and enhance with it. Visual arts, I'm not an artsy person. I just have to admit that automatically. That's even good for my drawing up there. And so the kids use a lot of tactile stuff. They use a lot of shaving cream, just stuff to get them molding clay. It's just a lot of enhancements so they can start creating and stuff. Physical development, we have to take brain breaks. I don't know about how many of you are a little tired of sitting down, but when you get up and you move and you do brain breaks, it enhances your brain and it gets it going again. So we do a ton of brain breaks throughout our day in the classroom. And then personal and social development. We have people that come up and talk to you right here, and you say, this is my space, and that's your space. So we start teaching children about that. And this is just my final slide that I have up here, and this is just talking about our programs that we have. We do have our Title I Pre-K. It's a 2.5-hour program. I would like to let you know that we are looking into the possibility of having it at some of our schools for all day for next year, so we're very excited about that possibility. We have the Community Ed right now, which is an all-day program that the parents pay for. We have our Gifted program. That's why Dr. Wong is standing behind me in case you have any questions about that. We are going to be getting that going this year, and it will be housed at Redfield. We're very excited about that opportunity. Mandarin, we have a Mandarin program with our pre-Ks that the kids go in, and we have a teacher that goes in and starts teaching them Mandarin, and that is held over at Desert Canyon. And then we have the Fly program that's at Pueblo, where the kids are being introduced to the Spanish language. So that is in very quick just of what our preschool is all about. We're moving, we're shaking, we're constantly going and growing every day. So if you have any questions.
Board Member Beckham.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful to hear about, especially since it's been a long time since I've been in a preschool class with my own children. I do have a couple of questions, and you answered one of them, and that is how many kids do we serve? I'm wondering if you have, let me see. Okay, you mentioned the best practices, and I'm wondering if parents have completed a parent evaluation at all regarding the services that you're now providing?
I actually don't know. I'll be real honest with you. I don't know if in the past if we've ever done something like that. Oh, no, but that would be something we will look into.
So the program that you're outlining here, is it actually implemented, or is this something you're implementing next year?
The only one we have not implemented at this time is the Gifted program, but the rest is all going on right now.
Okay. And you also mentioned teacher standards. And who oversees the teacher? Is it the principal at that particular site? And do they also do observations and give feedback to the teachers throughout the year doing formative assessments? Or is it not as formal as our K through 12? And it's just maybe an annual evaluation?
They go in, the teachers are actually under the same standard as all the rest of the teachers because they are highly qualified to go in. And so they get observed just like a regular teacher would, a kindergarten, a first grade, a sixth grade teacher. And so the principal does sit down, they do a post with them and discuss, so very much the same.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Board Member Hartman. Thank you, Dr. Berra. I always speak in terms of P20, pre-K to post-secondary, so this is a great topic for us. I have two questions for you. First of all, thank you for the presentation.
Absolutely.
Two questions. The first one is related to the Title I pre-K. So I'm just really actually understanding right now that that's 2.5 hours versus a full day in our preschool. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so I think my question for you is that vocabulary deficit is a big challenge and an indicator of future performance. Would extending that partial day to a full day enhance academic outcomes for the students attending those schools?
It's a yes and a no. If you have a strong teacher that's in there In the preschool world, which is very different than from a kinder through 12th grade world, we do not have to follow the standards as far as only putting things up in the English language. We can have them in numerous languages, so any child that walks in feels comfortable or they're learning a different language. So we can enhance that classroom in just our 2.5 hours for them to enrich the program so that they're introducing a lot more vocabulary. Would an all-day program be even better? Yes, it would, absolutely.
Okay. So to that point, go ahead.
It's a financial, I have to just share with that, it's a financial situation where if we have the funds available to be able to go through our title program and create an all-day program, then that's what we're looking into to see, do we have the funds to be able to start that in some of our schools.
Okay. These are just the financial challenges I love to have us talk about, so I would really support that continuing conversation for next year. My second question is roughly, and I might be off in these numbers, but in K-12 we have roughly between, I don't know, somewhere between 1,500 and 1,800 students per grade. I think that's about right. So if we have 709 students, does that mean we have another 800 to 1,100 out there that we should be looking for?
Mm-hmm. It absolutely does. June Torrance, who is my Panda person, actually goes and does what's Child Find, and she will go out into the homes and start interviewing the parents, interviewing the child to see if they need an earlier enrichment program, and then we go through testing to see if they qualify for any of our special needs program. What I've talked to a lot of the preschool teachers this last time when we met was, we need to go out and recruit. We need to start bragging about our program. We need to let them know what's going on out there. We're very excited because I've just had approval to be able to send out a postcard. So every family, every household in the Scottsdale Unified School District will get a postcard that's saying, preschool, come today, register today. So I think it's just a matter of, we need to start knocking on some doors and getting parents to realize that we even have a preschool, because we hear that a lot in our schools is, you have a preschool? We didn't know you had one.
Yeah. So to that point, that would be another probably very worthwhile effort, and I would think maybe there's some community partners that would actually like to engage with us in that effort, so that would be a great follow-up item as well. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
And President Perler, Governing Board Member Hartman, preschool has become more and more critical as both parents are working, and preschool has shifted. There was a day when there was a lot of the education that we talk about, the social emotional behavior. As a physical education person, gross motor, fine motor development is during these years. So the simple thing, we talk about balancing on one foot, or being able to walk with your hands at your side or out, or all this movement that we talk about. Believe it or not, those are all learned behaviors. And they're very, very critical to learn them early on, so it doesn't impede. But I want to go back to a point that Ms. Ibarra said. The language development couldn't be more critical, because the less engaged a child is at home, or that there is reading in the home, or that a parent reads to their child, the lower the exposure to words. And that has been where the researchers really come in, that low exposure to words has created this gap, and the closure of that gap takes till like 3rd grade. So they're starting out behind and they're remaining behind for another 3 years. So really important to get the kinder piece. Also, please know in our community we have some wonderful, great religious preschools as well, and we know that's a great option for parents as well, and we certainly respect that. But I think Scottsdale's also been the best kept secret.
Mm-hmm.
Board Member Kirby.
Thank you, Dr. Ibarra, for the presentation. I'm going to piggyback on Board Member Beckham's question. Have we ever looked at the conversion rate of the young children who are with us in pre-K3 or pre-K4 that then re-enroll with us for the next year? Because that would be the ultimate parent satisfaction survey, right?
We actually started that process this year with Dr. McCauley. She actually has brought me some information that we didn't have prior to this year to start going, are we keeping them? Are they continuing with us, or do we lose them? And so the majority of it is we're keeping them. Once they're here, they stay. And so we just need to figure out how to get them in the doors.
So do you have that percentage of, and is it pretty consistent across the 3 areas of Title, Panda, and Community Ed?
I'm sorry, I was being...
That's okay. I'll restate. Do you have those conversion percentages? And the follow-up question is, rather than just one percentage, is it consistent across Panda, Title, and Community Ed?
That I couldn't give you right now, but I will look into that. And right now I'm being told that it's 77% as far as our capture rate.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for presentation. Pre-K, I'm sure it's a lot of fun, and also a lot of work, no doubt. So obviously we see a lot of value here that's been expressed tonight. I just want to kind of add to future discussions the possibility of making sure that within our bond discussions, our pre-K, especially here in the South, are a part of that conversation, and we've taken a really hard look at where's the best places for these facilities and how can we make them terrific as we rebuild schools and carve out the future of SUSD. So I'll add that as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? I see no lights. That is. So then we will move on to action items. 9A, approval of projects for the first and second bond sale for the 2016 bond program. Mr. O'Brien, I believe,
Good evening.
is presenting.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Birdwell and Sandra. This will be a little bit of a review from our work study on Thursday, but what we did do is after some of the comments and questions and inquiries on Thursday and over the past few days and speaking with administration, we have kind of condensed this into what we're kind of calling the draft. So as I always like to say, I always seem to be the one that has living, breathing documents that change constantly with budget numbers and other items. So what we did here is we kind of took some of the comments that we've heard over the past couple days in discussing with administration and kind of put together a draft, knowing that throughout the entire bond program, not just the first sale or the second sale, but the entire bond program, as we start to get deeper in, I think I would probably say as we go, each week, if not each board meeting, as we start to sharpen our pencil, start to get contractors on board, start to get architects on board, learning as we look at Hopi, learning that as we go, and then possibly the city of Phoenix wants us to do certain things, or the architect or the engineer says we have to do certain things because of certain parameters on the site, or whatever might happen, that these numbers will almost somewhat change on a pretty regular basis. Obviously, once we get to the full design process and bring a contractor on board, they shouldn't change too much, but you always do have some contingencies and some unforeseens once you start knocking down buildings and digging up playgrounds that might not have been touched for many, many years, if not decades. So we kind of went through a little bit in some of the discussion that we've had. What we did is just put together kind of our first brush. Again, knowing that discussion with the board and discussion with administration, these things can change as we go. But we still do have up there starting Hopi. We do have the discussion of rebuild of a second school, or the start of a rebuild of a second school. And then if you remember from Thursday, we kind of had 2 different discussions about Cheyenne. One doing it all together, and then possibly one of kind of doing it all together but phasing it a little bit. And we had a little discussion that might extend the timeline, might cost a little bit of extra dollars, but then also if we kind of, again, is it a moving document, and as I said, the pieces of the puzzles kind of have to go together, we can do some things to maybe readjust that and see what we can do as we discuss over this evening. We have the track and fields, and the demolition of the building at the 68th Street campus, or the old Tonalea. As school site safety, we have the upgrades, as we talked about the safety and the security of the schools. We have some cameras, we have some hardware, and most of that is exterior door hardware, exterior gate hardware at many of our schools, almost every school, except for the rebuilds. Updating the front offices. This could range from putting in a couple walls, putting in a door, putting in some security features to, again, control that access to people only coming in one spot so we know who's on campus and who's not on campus. We had some discussion about marquees. If you can see there, if you remember from Thursday, that number has actually been decreased a little bit with some discussion and some pencil sharpening. We have looked and said some of the marquees and some of the rebuilds can be done with the rebuild dollars, and so these are only ones that would be at existing sites that do not have digital marquees at this time. Again, remembering marquees is something that can maybe be looked at to move around a little bit, as marquees can be done during a school day. They're not as disruptive as taking out a front desk and moving things around. So again, we can work on some of those. And then going into the fall bond sale, again, coming in February, once we have our assessed valuations, we'll have a little bit more of a track on exactly when we will be able to sell this, but again, that kind of that October, November timeframe. We have the finish of rebuild of Hopi, the finish of rebuild of school number 2, if one is chosen, and then again, that phase a little bit of Cheyenne and the gym and the front office and the security. One thing I do want to mention is I've spoken this evening. When we put some dollars up there, $18 million to rebuild Hopi, that is kind of an estimate, a broad estimate right now, as we're just in the first phases. We're just starting to talk to the architect. We're just starting to talk to the consultants. As we move in, if the City of Phoenix permit goes long, or if the design process goes long, or if we have any holdup with a fire marshal or anything like that, we might not spend that full $18 million. So there is some area where we might say, hey, we're only going to do about 15 of that. Can we move some things around and look at some things? So there's definitely some discussion that we can have here tonight when it comes to possibly some of these larger items. The fields, some of the demolition, that's probably something that will be done in the time frame before the next sale happens. But again, that Hopi and those schools will usually maybe not spend all the money out of 2 sales, but definitely will run both sales as their 18, 24-month processes. So again, a very first brush, as we mentioned, we do have a little bit money, some dollars, not necessarily left over out of the first sale, but just haven't quite been allocated, so we can move some of those dollars around too. So really, just wanted to lay this out there as that draft, remembering that it's going to be changing, and get the discussion going for board members on what they'd possibly like to see. I will try to move some of the numbers around as we go here, but please know that I'm doing it on some pencil and paper, and I might be off a penny or two.
And Governing Board, just to add on, Mr. O'Brien and I were having a conversation today about what also is happening in the economy around us, and understanding that with the increase of minimum wage and with the construction issues under discussion at more of a national as well as a local level, what we're seeing is construction costs already beginning to rise, and we're seeing labor costs rising. So catching some of these early big projects is really critical, also in being good stewards of the dollars before we see a continued escalation. Now, we'll continue to monitor and watch that and bring those changes to you as we begin to see them. But and I know you're aware of that because we had to change our minimum wage as well.
And to add to that, Dr. Birdwell, thank you very much. Again, in some of this discussion, as we start talking about how we might be procuring some of these items, some things like, well, if we do 4 marquees at the time, can we get a better deal than if we do 1 individually? If we do all 3 tracks, combine them together and do them and bid them out, can we get a better economies of scale, a little bit better pricing to be able to help offset those and lower some dollars? So there are also some other planning things that we are doing. Can we find like front offices? Okay, we know 3 doors are going in each of these 3 front offices. Can we do that under the same contract, knowing that, hey, when you buy 9 doors instead of 3 doors, we can get a better price? So a lot of those things that we'll be looking over the next couple of weeks and couple months ahead. So thank you.
Okay. Vice President Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for the presentation. I'd like to throw a proposal out there for my fellow board members to discuss. As I spent the weekend really thinking through this, and we left last Thursday, which was our first blush at it, I had time to process. So as I look at the projects for year 1, I wanted to try to find some financial capacity to keep all of the Cheyenne work in year one together. So if you remember, we moved all of the safety items up to year one because that's important, right? It brings a liability if we just continue to ignore it. The marquees were initially coded under safety, but I got on Google Earth and looked at the marquees and they're all short. So the safety concern isn't there like we thought it was. So then I thought, well, there's $600,000, which is now $400,000. Is it at all possible to find some more financial capacity to move the $5.6 million in year two up to year one? So I met with Mr. O'Brien and Dr. Birdwell today, and we talked about just that. And if you took the $5.6 million in year two for Cheyenne, and you said, well, we have $1.1 million left over that we can apply to it, and we're going to move the marquees to year two and use that $400,000, then we would be left with trying to find $4 million, which then got us into a discussion on the two biggest ticket items on here, which is the two rebuilds, Hopi and the yet-to-be-named school number 2. And we just talked about, is it reasonable, is it practical to expect that we, for example, in Hopi, are going to spend the full $18 million in year one? And Mr. O'Brien and I had a conversation about his comfort level with that question, and rather than me try to put words in his mouth, I'll ask it again publicly and then let you talk through this fluidity of how we're moving through this.
Sure. Madam President, Board Member Kirby, thank you. Yes, as our discussion happened this morning, always a little conservative when I stand up here and do some numbers, but looking at some of this stuff and looking and talking just briefly with some of the consultants and stuff, the $18 million is probably more than what we will spend in that first sale. Again, as I spoke this afternoon, probably wouldn't want to tell you $10 million because I'm not sure how fast we're going to go versus how slow we're going to go. I think there probably is, out of both of those, especially since currently right now rebuild number 2 is not set in stone. It'll be a time frame that I think through Hopi and the rebuild of school number 2. I just did the math real quick. We did change the marquees, so we have 1.3 in savings, not the 1.1 that we discussed from the last number. So we're sitting at about $3.9 million. I think we can probably get $2 to $3 million out of Hopi and probably another 1 or 2 out of rebuild number 2, and that gives me also a little cushion to just play with those numbers. But I think we can probably get down to about $16 million and probably about $8 million in build number 2, and still be conservative that if we do get good passage through of the city of Phoenix and get really going on Hopi or and have a real good contractor that really moves, we still have the ability to be able to keep that project moving and going forward. But I believe we can do that. Yes.
Okay. Any other comments from board members? Oh, sorry, Board Member Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Always thorough, I really appreciate it. Question for you, and this came up in work study, and I think it was kind of an action item to follow up on. But part of this discussion last Thursday was actually the life cycle maintenance work as well, which we forecasted at $13.1 million over the next 6 years. I think those were the numbers. So if I just take that, it's 1 to 2 million, right, for next year. Does this need to cover that life cycle work too, or does that $1 to $2 million of life cycle work
Sure.
get addressed somewhere else?
Madam President, Board Member Hartman, let me just ask clarifying, just so I make sure we're on the same page. We kind of have 2 life cycles that we've talked about over the past spring and summer. We have FMG's kind of life cycle work, and then we have kind of what we're calling in the bond of some life cycles. I think you're talking about some of the FMG work.
I am.
Some of that work that needs to be done, again, is on some of the rebuilds. We did some of that work to show
why the purpose of a rebuild was there. So as we start doing one or two of these schools and rebuilding them, then some of those dollars don't have to be spent. Now, again, I know some of the discussion happened at last Thursdays of having just a little bit of a buffer for maybe possibly if a chiller goes down, or if something like that goes down, where or roof unfortunately maybe caves in, knock on wood. That I think, again, as Board Member Kirby spoke, as we spoke, is I kind of tweak those numbers when we start to get into some real hard numbers and scheduling with Hopi and some of the other projects. I think we'll have enough of a buffer that we can protect ourselves with some of those dollars and be able to allow those items to happen. I know Dr. Birdwell had mentioned some of the costs and stuff. What we also get into is scheduling. Although summer seems a very long ways away, trying to get through the construction process and trying to get contractors and stuff, there might be some things that get delayed till weekends after school starts and stuff like that. So there's some other ways that we can be conservative with the dollars and stretch every sale as far as we can. But again, just not knowing those hard numbers until we start hiring some of the consultants and architects and contractors.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question a little bit. Okay, perfect.
Board Member Kirby.
Thank you, Board Member Hartman, for reminding me of that, the life cycle question, 'cause that's a good question. I'd completely forgotten about that. But I'll add, as you brought up last meeting, the demo of the buildings that's in there for $2.3 million, we can do that anytime. I mean, that's on its own site, and we can maybe go through the next 6 months or so and keep it as a priority, but that could be our flex item, where we said, okay, we're going to push that into the first month of the second year of projects. Having lived next to a hotel that was blighted for 8 years on Lincoln, I am very sensitive to the community around that property and doing what's right for that community as quickly as we can. But that could be a flex item for us.
Madam President, Board Member Kirby, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, and as we talked a little bit this afternoon, as Dr. Birdwell and myself talked again this afternoon, this document, we talked at the work study about having monthly updates and keeping the community, all that is going to go into that. All that is going to be a constant discussion of where are we here, where are these budgets here, where are they coming here, and so we definitely have some things that as we get the schedule for Hopi and get some more of the hard cost, then we can say, hey, we know that's only going to be $15 million for Hopi. Let's go ahead and start the demo. Maybe that's August, maybe that's September. Maybe we get good assessed valuations, and our second sale can be in September, not October. So there's a lot of items that we continuously go through and continuously think about to work through these items. But I feel very comfortable with that. Yes.
Yes. If I could add something, governing board members, President Perleberg, two issues as well to keep in mind. We went out to the principals and we requested a list, and they sent us pieces, and we're working through, well, is that really a bond item, or is it a capital item, or is it something, and I'm going to use Cheyenne, for example, since it's one that popped in my brain, but for instance, the playground that needs to be removed from there, it's really not a bond item. It could be done by staff, or we could use capital dollars to hire someone to remove it, but it really isn't the best use of bond dollars. So we're going through each of those projects of the request and saying, yes, it needs to be done, let's get it done, but let's allocate it in the right budget bucket and make sure that we use those dollars efficiently. So, yes, the playground needs to be removed. Grace, we'll get it done, okay? But it's probably not the best bond project dollar. So we heard the principals, we're going through their list. I don't want them to think that we've ignored any of those. Second to that, I also might just want to state for the record and for the community that the board discussed having a February 2nd, 4 p.m. meeting here to have a full corridor discussion, because we know that, and in February we'll be bringing to the governing board a piece of that tied to Hohokam, as the community has requested to be a K-8 school. And in that, we have a traditional school that's also requesting to be a K-8, which then really aligns to that Cheyenne moment of we have a traditional in the north, we have a traditional in the south. But in full piece, the board has requested to have the discussion with Hohokam and Pima and Navajo and Kiva all together, and I think it's a good discussion to have, and we have dedicated an extra special meeting on February 2nd just for that conversation so that the community knows you haven't been ignored. We want to take this by, there's no reason to run through this. There's no reason to rush the discussion. Building number 2 on here is slated in the first cell, but wouldn't begin the design for 6 months, which gives us a little time to have deeper conversations. And so just to take us back to that first time that we did scoring, Hohokam was the number 1 school. We moved it to the number 2 for a further discussion, but I don't want Hohokam to think that they're not on our, at the forefront of our conversation.
All right. Board Member Beckham, did you have your light on earlier? Or? You got answered. All right, excellent. Board Member Kravitz.
I just want to clarify, is the construction of a classroom that is for science labs and computer classroom? Because I've seen things broken out in different ways, so I want to make sure I know what I'm getting.
We'll let Mr. O'Brien pass on an academic question that's, so let me answer that for you. It's a classroom building. With specialization of the interior of it, it becomes a science building. But in addition to that, we know there is a need for extra computer lab. We are looking at the programs and the studies of how to best support that. So how those classrooms are used interior, we want to make sure that we meet with the principal and talk to her about her needs and make sure that we address if there is a shortage of classroom. We know there's a shortage of computer space. We want to make sure that we include that into the design of that science building. We know we need science labs, we know we need computer space, but we might also have some more space needed. So we want to be inclusive in that process. So once approved, you begin the design process, meeting with the principal, the site council, some of the teachers, the architect sits down, and we begin that in-depth dive into exactly what the interior looks like.
Okay, Board Member Kirby.
Okay, so thank you. So Board Member Kravitz's point, I just want to recap for clarity what we're talking about in the Cheyenne project list. Science labs, computer labs, gymnasium, parking lot, and front office. And I would like for you to, again, one more time, say what you mean by this front office, whatever you're calling it. Because it's not a complete tear down rebuild for the front office. So if you'll just, for the record.
Madam President, Board Member Kirby, thank you. I'll answer Cheyenne first, and then I might go a little further for a little more clarity, so I make sure because the document is a moving document. So it is the classroom space, which then we will get into the instructional space with the principal, with administration. It's kind of build the walls, and then we can configure the interior. It is parking lot improvements, which also include a fire lane, because we have to get back to some of those buildings, some parking lot and some flow movement. It is the gym or gymnasium, and we looked at 2 options, but the one over there on the ball fields is a little bit better of an option. And then the front office programmed into the gymnasium and the classroom space was kind of the front office renovations, just like is up there for the 3.5, where we're doing some security upgrades. At Cheyenne right now, if you run fast enough, you can run through the front door and you can run right back into the campus, and if nobody tackles you fast enough, you're in the campus. So again, getting those people to flow in the direction that we want. So it's not necessarily a complete tear down, move it, redesign it. It's redesigning the existing front office to make sure that it's secure and appropriate, so that we're funneling the people into the right spaces areas that we want. So if I can expand on yours just a little bit for more clarification. So from what I've heard from the board is a possible movement of the $400,000 into possibly the fall of 2017 for digital marquees. Move Cheyenne up. We're to continue to get Hopi and rebuild number 2 a little bit more defined, knowing that some of those numbers are going to come off, which is going to help Cheyenne move up into the area, and then not necessarily stop, but hold or pause the demo of 68th Street campus until we do get some of those other numbers, making sure that we're covering our bases, that if we have to use some of the demo money to do Cheyenne and maybe postpone the demo to the second sale. But again, those are a few moving items that we'll continuously look at. I just want to make sure I'm heard some of the comments from tonight.
Any questions, concerns? Okay. All right.
Perfect. Thank you very much for letting me do that.
Thank you. Okay, so, I guess we could try to build a motion at this time.
Well, I don't know if this is legal, but I was going to just make a motion to approve the projects for the first and second. Do we need the second, or just for the, okay, to approve the projects for the first bond sale for the 2016 bond program, as Mr. O'Brien just recapped it.
For the first
And I
sale.
could recap them real
Right,
quick if you'd like me
right.
to again.
Yeah, and to clarify, yes, we're not approving a second bond sale or all that's in it by any means tonight.
Just the
So,
just the first.
Just that first and its priorities. Board Member Kirby has made the motion. Do I have a second? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see a light. Board Member Hartman?
I'll second.
Board Member Hartman seconds the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to reiterate that building number 2 is part of that initiative, but on February 2nd, the governing board has a special session to work through what building number 2, to give it a name. But it is part of the first sale of the bond.
Yes. Okay. So that moves us on to action item 9B, approval of building the addition of science and gymnasium space for Cheyenne.
Before we move on, can I just say one thing? I want to thank the PTO of Cheyenne, the principal, and Mr. Norton for the great communication and helping us understand the school and the needs. So just before you leave, I just want to say thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right. Okay. Mr. O'Brien, are you up again on this action item? Or we just make a motion?
I'm just here in case questions are going to be asked.
Okay, all right. Board Member Beckham. Did you have a comment, question? Oh, all right. Board Member Hartman. You're good too. All right, Board Member Kirby.
Okay, thank you. So,
All right, 1 for 3.
this action item says approval of building the addition of science and gymnasium space for Cheyenne. Should that be amended to say something like approval of building the addition of classroom space, gymnasium space, and parking lot improvements and front office? I don't know how specific we need to get to try to capture everything we talked about.
Sure. Madam President, Board Member Kirby, we don't have to get too specific because parking lot improvements are kind of part of a construction process. It happens within that adjacent ways, ingress, egress. The front office is part of it, but if you do want to add front office, I think that would be good, just as a slight addition so we know in the community and we're being transparent on what we're doing. Yes, ma'am.
So,
Okay.
it's not a remodel though, and
Okay.
it's not a new building.
No, so it's a recommendation that the governing board approve the building of additional classroom space in the gymnasium and a remodel of the front office.
Is remodel an appropriate verb?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Or front office security renovations as.
A little more,
our
I like that
statement.
better. Why don't you make
As
the
our-
motion then?
Thank you. Oh, gosh, all right. So then, and just to clarify too, the Panda Playground, different bucket of money, and that's
But we
not
will continue
included.
to work on it.
All right. So then, I will make a motion that the construction of a science building, parking lot improvements, construction of a gym, and front office security renovations be approved. Do I have a second? Second. Board Member Hartman seconds. All in favor?
No, it was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I saw lights flashing. Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Righty. Okay. Now that brings us to the amended item, which is now 9C, approval to purchase architectural services.
Thank you, Governing Board. Actually, it's me.
Okay.
So, in order to jump right on that Cheyenne project, we actually would like to assign an architectural firm. We had a firm that went out and spent a little time and took a look, and we'd like to stay with them. We are recommending, under the 1 GPA process, that we hire Orcott Windsor to design Cheyenne's gymnasium, its classroom building, which includes science laboratory space and computer space, as well as the renovation of the front office security needs and the parking lot.
All right. Board Member Kirby.
So just so everyone can keep up with us here, this was actually one of the items that was originally on our consent, but it didn't make sense to approve that before we had the last discussion. So that's why it got pulled and moved. So with that, I move to approve to purchase architectural services for Cheyenne as recommended by administration.
Board Member Kirby makes a motion. Do I have a second? Board Member Hartman? Did I hear? No, sorry. Board Member Beckham seconds. Exactly. It also says, there's no man up here to, distinguish. Board Member Beckham seconds the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Our next amended item then is the new item 9D, classification framework revisions.
And we have Dr. Sidden and Dr. McCauley to discuss this item with you.
We are very excited to be here this evening, aren't we, Anna? Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Birdwell and Sandra, we're going to go over some of the classification framework revisions with a recommendation for action this evening. Just a little bit of history of the why we do classifications. It is required under state statute, which is the reason why we have classifications at all. So you have the state statute up there, and part of that statute also gives us what the performance classifications have to be, so we can't change those, and also talks about that 33 to 50% of the classification must come from student academic progress, and in our model, it's at 33%. A little bit of history. It came back and was approved back in 2011. We had a teacher evaluation committee that worked on this and brought the recommendation to the board initially. This is what the current system is. We have what's called A teachers and B teachers. So our A teachers is made up of teacher evaluation. They have individual student tests, and we call those pre and post tests is what they have, and then the district letter grade counts for a piece of it. B teachers don't have individual student data. They don't have the pre and post test, so what their breakdown looks like is still evaluation, district letter grade, and parent survey for rounding out the 2%. We're also bringing to you the principal classification. So the principal was the same process, worked with a group of administrators on this to come up with theirs years ago. It had the evaluation, and they did have the school pre and post data was put in there, and then the district survey for 2%. We've worked with the teacher evaluation committee again this year, as well as a principal evaluation committee, and we've worked with SCA on the proposal also. We're looking to bring all teachers aligned to just one system, and they would be considered B teachers because we're looking to replace pre and post, no longer do those, with growth for the school-wide data. So because it is school-wide, they have to be classified as a B teacher. And the principal evaluation would be identical to that. It would be 67% evaluation, and they would get school-wide data, would also apply to the principal. When we went out, Dr. McCauley and I, to work with the SEA and the site reps, we brought some data with us to kind of take a look at what happened if we used last year's data, but under this current proposal, what would happen. So we know we had 65% of the A teachers. This is their growth. It had high growth, moderate growth, or low growth. So this was based on pre-post test data. If we were to rerun the data, which Dr. McCauley did, and we looked at school-wide data, what would happen to that percent for those A teachers? So 65% became almost 60% as high growth, 28% were moderate growth, and 12.5% were low growth. What would also happen to the classification then? So that last slide showed you the data, if they got high growth, moderate growth, or low growth. This is actually the classification then for those A teachers. How many were classified highly effective, and what would that proposed change? So it actually goes up some for our A teachers. And then remembering that our ineffective is completely based on their evaluation, which is why you see no change. That the evaluation is what drives that classification. Now, B teachers, you do see quite a bit change, because remember, our B teachers are not based on the individual student data, and so when you change that proposal and they're now in the mix of all of the other teachers with the school-wide data, you can see what the breakdown is. And again, developing ineffective is driven by the evaluation, which is why you don't see the change there. Same thing for principal classification. We took a look at mocking up that data also. What would that look like? And it mirrors the 60% that we would see for the school-wide data that were at the high growth. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McCauley. We had a great meeting with Board Member Kirby. Thank you for helping get our thinking clarified. And so she's going to go ahead and explain some of it.
Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Birdwell, Sandra, and everyone with us, good evening. So I wanted to define in some layman's terms some of the statistical analyses and measures behind how we would go about measuring for the classification. So one of the words you're gonna hear from me is residual. It's simply the difference between two values. It's your growth score. So if I take 1 year's score and subtract it from, or the prior year's score, subtract it from the current year's score, I have a residual. A p-value, that is our statistical significance value, and I'm looking for this when I run a test on my model to see if there is a difference in means. And so the p-value is sort of your 95% confidence interval. So you want your p-value to be 0.05 or lower, because that 0.05 connotes a percentage, the 5%. The r-value is the correlation. That is how strongly two values are related to one another. If one goes up, the other one goes up. If one goes down, the other one goes down. Or sometimes if one goes up, the other goes down. Either way, that's talking about your correlation. Projected growth. This would be expected growth model using statistical analyses, linear regression, where multiple years of data are used to project how the student should score based on how they've typically scored in the past. It's very important that the students, as much as I can possibly get the measure to do this, be their own controls. I'm trying to control for any of those confounding variables that make their way in, so I also will do a quintile ranking of their past performance and use that as a variable, and it really teases out and helps with the model. Then you do a residual there too. So then we have a simple growth, that's just year one, year two, what's the difference? And then a pooled growth, this is an option where I can actually just compare how they did on average in years past to the current year too. Okay, so the calculation selection, there's going to be a lot of work that has to go into this. So once the projection model is complete and I start running my tests, I'm going to run tests on the means in the 3 different ways. On the projected model, on the simple growth, and then on the pooled difference. I prefer the projected growth because it does take into account past performance and it does keep the kid as their control. Now, there is a limitation with this. If a preponderance of students have been on the decline for multiple years in a row, the projection's going to predict them to come out lower. So that's a problem. That is a big problem because we would never, ever allow expected growth to be negative. So if the projected growth, once I aggregate it across the school and I compare it to their actual scores in the prior year and their actual their pooled scores, and the projection is lower than either of those, I'm going to not apply that method. I'm going to take the either simple growth or the pooled growth. That way we don't have kids being predicted to score lower than
they should be. Okay, is that good so far? Yes, and then I will apply a lot of different tests to pick the best fit in this situation. I would only think this might happen at 1 or 2 schools. As I mocked this up and ran some impact data, that was the case at a couple of schools. But looking at the other measures, I saw growth, so that was good. So those schools would not have been hurt by having to apply a different method. But I would do other tests too to find that best fit, maybe a chi-square, maybe a power law. I would figure it out and get it there. Okay. So here's some examples of what this will look like. So we've got the 3 methods there for school A. And so this is our, what do you call that? Pretend scenario. So we're going to say on the projected, the residual growth was positive. And a positive is just what it is, 0 or better. Was the projected growth greater than or equal to the prior years? Yes, it was. The p-value is below 0.05, so I know this is statistically significant, so I get to accept our hypothesis that the school actually grew, and we have an R value of 0.667. Now, the R value on here tells me a lot, too, that correlation was lower than, say, 0.8, then I can really see, yeah, there really was something that happened here. Had that R value been higher, it's still one of those, well, you know, could be the kids learning, but that R value is telling me a lot. School A, with the simple method, they actually went down year to year. There's no projected prior year. The p-value is 0.345. That's 34%, 34.5%. That is not statistically significant, and so that would have resulted in moderate growth, but I already have the projected that worked. On the pool, it was positive with a good p-value, and that was high growth. Overall, though, the projected was the best model anyway, and that's what they would get. Oh, high growth, yep. And then the evaluation.
Then it gets handed off to me. So she's going to hand off to me that school A had high growth. Then I go through and take all the evaluations for the schools, and if they're at standard, and again, that means they had all highly effective or effective. So if they're at standard, have high growth, their overall classification would be highly effective. You can do example 2.
Yep, great. All right, so now example 2, we've got the projected was positive, but the projection was actually lower than how the kids have typically performed. Therefore, I'm not using this model for the school. So then I move on to the simple growth. It was negative, but it's not statistically significant. I got 11% that could be due to chance in there. So since I can't say, yeah, our hypothesis was right, I also can't say that it was wrong, so it becomes moderate growth there. Looking at the pool data, though, however, they were negative. P-value was 0, and there was a very high R value, meaning these kids really aren't changing much. They're just going down, and that would result in low growth. So I'm handing it off so she can explain to you why.
So with low growth, if they have the positive evaluation still, all highly effective and effectives, so they're at standard on their evaluation, their overall classification then becomes effective.
And then the final example, using the projected, again, that is the model that works best here. They actually had the negative residual. Their projection was higher than prior years of performance. The p-value is statistically significant. The R value is good, and so it's low growth. And this evaluation for this particular teacher was below standard, which would result in, once we combine the 2 scores, in developing or ineffective. There. Okay. Any questions?
Board Member Hartman.
I would just like to say that, speaking to the, the Oscar season we're in, this is like watching Hidden Figures and Arrival together. So there's a math giant and a linguistic that is translating this. So anyways, I really just wanted to thank you for all the work on this. You've spent a lot of time with us. I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I had a particular passion on that projected growth. And so I really appreciate the additional time and tutorial also after that additional time to help me understand. So thank you.
Okay. Vice President Kirby.
So you spent 90 minutes, the two of you spent 90 minutes with me on Friday, and I have failed to send a thank you note, but thank you for that time. True story, while you were presenting all of the statistical information, my Apple Watch that I got for Christmas that I just figured out how to use on Sunday told me to breathe. True story, true story. So thank you both for the extra time. This is complicated. This is very complicated, but our community needs to understand it as much as we can help. So thanks.
Thank you. Board Member Beckham.
I don't have a funny story. I'm very inadequate up here. I want to also thank you for going over this with me before Thursday and then spending some time today on it. So I just want to get clarification so that I understand, because this is not, I like data that's simple, that you can understand, and that's kind of straightforward. Otherwise, to be honest with you, I think let's just find what is simpler and easy to understand, or let's not use it because it complicates it. It's kind of, okay, it's kind of like the IRS, okay? All three options will be run for every this clarification, for all three schools, and then you are gonna determine which one is most significant for that particular site. Is that true statement or not?
I can actually run additional tests to see which model was the best fit, or I could just apply the caveat only when the projection was lower than prior performance. That would be something I would.
Okay, so
I will probably do it anyway, just because that's what I do.
But otherwise, if that statement's not true, then you plan on running the first option we saw first. If it correlates significantly to the data that you have, you will use that and you don't need to go to the other two. Is that what I'm hearing?
But I'll probably do them all at once. It only takes a couple more clicks.
Okay, all right. Well, I want to thank you because I do understand what you're doing now, so thank you. I just want to clarify then that this is tied to the 301 funds, which, correct? And correct. The part that this is tied to, because 20% of that is base funds and then 20% of it's menu, and then there's some 20% I haven't figured out yet, but then there's 40% that are performance pay, and that's what this is tied to. But every teacher or principal that comes out effective or highly effective receives the 40% performance pay. If they are ineffective or non-performing, they don't receive that performance pay?
They get a portion of it. Well, first off, it's for certain certified teachers. This does not apply to principals at all. 301 by statute has, an interpretation has certain people that it applies to. So not all certified staff necessarily get 301, so they've got to meet that requirement. And then if they're developing, it's a certain portion. If they're 2 years developing, it's a lower portion, and if they're ineffective, it's 0%.
Okay. So then how does this apply to principals since we have a principal classification up there? What is, we provide this evaluation, what is it used for?
It is meeting the state statute requiring us to have a classification system for principals. There's no dollars attached to it.
And what happens with that information?
It gets reported back up to the state at some point. Every fall, we report back the district data to the state.
So we just say the state, these are our principals, this is what they received, and do we as a district don't use that information then for anything?
It's hard because it's based on like the past system was not based on enough of your school scores. I think the current system moving forward, because it is your school-wide data, is going to be much more useful when we talk about sitting down with principals with their supervisor to take a look at the data, because it's going to be meaningful data to them now. In the past, it was only selective teachers took it. Some of them would be teachers, so they didn't even have the data. So I think it's going to have more meaning moving forward. But there are no dollars attached to it.
Okay. Well, I would hope that if we are taking the time and energy to do this, that hopefully it will be meaningful enough to put into maybe a teacher evaluation in the future. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Principal, excuse me.
I'm going to jump in there as well, and because you said something I think very important, this school-wide data and this to highlight how it can be used as a tool, as opposed to just that simple, do you get your $301 question or not? And ours is maybe something important to highlight tonight as well. If you're prepared to comment at all on, I mean, it's kind of something new, obviously, just developing it, but how it might be used in the future between conversations with principals and administration, and also principals and their teachers.
I will go through with each principal every little point of that data, and we'll talk about, okay, what happened in 4th grade? Something happened because this is not typical. And then we'll start digging and looking at other data sometimes. Let's see how they were doing on the benchmarks. Let's see. And sometimes you find out, we had an experience where this whole school was on the wrong curriculum map, and when we had our benchmark, they tanked. And so after sitting down with the principal and them doing their investigation after we had done our little data dives, that's what they found out. They were on the wrong curriculum map. So, but yeah, if you don't dig in and you're just doing it to jump through this hoop or that hoop, that's a lot of work just for a hoop.
Yeah, Governing Board, meaningful, valid, reliable data allows for great conversations and meaning, and that's how we go forward. We'll be having those conversations. Having a system that doesn't have those correlates doesn't allow for that meaningful conversation. So I think going forward, and I'm just going to say this again, our principals have been so embracing of the data that Dr. McCauley has been providing, and I know that they welcome the rate of reliability training that they've had through HR to look at consistency of the use of the tool of evaluation. We're going to keep growing forward with this, but this is one more piece of data to have good dialogue around the act of teaching.
All right. Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the classification framework revisions as presented?
So moved.
Board Member Kirby makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
President Perlberg, I want to acknowledge SEA, Julie, and the teachers. We had meetings with the entire district site representatives from all of the schools, and very meaningful dialogue that led to this point. So I do want to, again, that inclusiveness of every school being represented was critical in being able to move forward. So I want to thank them.
Thank you. Okay. So our next item, item X, item 10, future items. Not sure if these are necessarily agenda items or just to bring back in discussions. I heard tonight, especially around pre-K, conversations coming back about parent surveys and taking a look at the numbers of families returning and how that's either growing or decreasing here in the future. Pre-K in our future bond discussions, and possible full-day funding and marketing opportunities that might be able to come back to the board as well. Do I have any requests for future items other than those? Board Member Hartman.
Two to add, and we've talked about them in the past. Just want to make sure they get on our future list. And the first is the 2017 SUSD and Superintendent Success Metrics. And then number 2 is 2017 employee engagement or satisfaction survey.
Okay. All right. No other items? Then we will move on to item 11, dates of upcoming meetings. As mentioned before, we do have a special meeting added February 2nd at 4 p.m. to be held here in the Governing Board room to discuss the Granite Reef Corridor. We also have a meeting Thursday, February 9th at 3 p.m., a study session at the Mojave District Annex, and Tuesday, February 14th at 5 p.m. here in this room, regular Governing Board meeting. Do I have any Governing Board reports? Board Member Hartman. Thank you. I have 2 items, but the first item we exhaustively covered, which was Coronado Success Initiative, and the second, in which I've had activity and really some interesting outcomes, was related to Business Unified for Scottsdale Schools. Worked with coordinating a meeting between bus board members and the City of Tempe Council to determine if there are lessons we can learn from their similar student-focused workforce initiative to build a stronger bus financial and organizational model. And so we'll be hopefully hearing more about that too. All righty. Any other comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Before I make this motion, I would just like to congratulate you on running a successful first meeting, President Pelleberg.
Thank you.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I heard so many. Motion is seconded. All in favor? Aye. Board Member Peckham, I think. All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for your patience as I learn the ropes.
I have one question because I was going to bring
Okay.